When Chicago Mafia boss Vincent Calloway discovered his terminal cancer, he wasn't afraid of death. He was terrified of dying without a son to inherit his empire. His cold wife and three ruthless daughters were already circling like vultures, ready to tear apart everything he'd built. Then he hired Claire Bennett, a broke young caregiver who seemed powerless and alone. What started as a desperate job became something far more dangerous when Vincent made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Carry his child, and he'd change both their lives forever. But in a world built on violence and betrayal, some legacies come with a price written in blood. If you want to see how this story ends, stay with me until the final word. And please hit the like button and comment with your city, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The mansion on Lakeshore Drive didn't look like a place where empires crumbled. From the outside, it was all old money elegance. Limestone facade, iron gates, windows that caught the Chicago sunset and threw it back in shades of amber and gold. But Claire Bennett knew better than to trust beautiful surfaces. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, more times than she cared to count. She stood at those gates on a Tuesday morning in late September, her entire life packed into 2 suitcases and a backpack that had seen better days. The security guard, a thick-necked man with eyes like a shark, looked her up and down with the kind of assessment that made her skin crawl. "You the new nurse?" His voice carried the flat vowels of South Side Chicago. "Caregiver," Claire corrected, keeping her voice steady. "Claire Bennett." He grunted, checked his tablet, then waved her through without another word. The gate swung open with a smooth, expensive whisper, and Claire walked into what would either be her salvation or her grave. At 26 years old, she'd stopped believing in easy answers. The interview 3 days earlier had been strange from the start. Not at the mansion, but in a downtown office that smelled like leather and old cigars. The woman conducting it, Margaret something, severe suit, hair pulled back so tight it had to hurt, hadn't asked about Claire's qualifications, hadn't asked for references, had barely glanced at the home health aide certification Claire had worked 2 jobs to afford. Instead, Margaret had asked different questions. "Do you have family in Chicago?" "No." "Anywhere else?" "Not really." Claire's parents were dead. Her sister hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. No husband, no boyfriend, no friends close enough to notice if she disappeared. "Good." Margaret made a note. "Current debts?" Claire had hesitated. "Some." "How much?" $42,000. Student loans from a degree she'd never finished, medical bills from her mother's last year, credit cards she'd maxed out just trying to survive. The number sat in her chest like a stone. Margaret hadn't blinked. "The position pays $200,000 a year, room and board included. You'll sign an NDA. You'll live on site. You won't discuss your employer or his condition with anyone outside the household. Violation of confidentiality results in immediate termination and legal action. Do you understand?" $200,000. Claire had been making $32,000 working double shifts at a nursing home where half the residents died alone and the other half wished they could. She'd understood perfectly. Now, walking up the curved driveway, Claire understood something else. She'd been hired because she had nothing. No connections, no safety net, no one who'd come looking if something went wrong. Margaret had been checking how disposable she was. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman in her early 50s stood there, elegant in the way that came from money so old it didn't need to prove anything. Black dress, pearl necklace, hair that probably cost more to maintain than Claire's monthly rent used to be. "You must be the new girl?" The woman's voice was smooth, educated, cold. "I'm Evelyn Calloway, Vincent's wife." Not Mrs. Calloway. Not welcome. Just a statement of fact delivered with all the warmth of a contract signing. "Claire Bennett," Claire said, offering her hand. Evelyn looked at it like Claire had offered her a dead fish. Margaret should have explained the house rules. "You'll have a room on the 3rd floor near Vincent's suite. You're responsible for his medications, his meals, his mobility, and his comfort. You're not family, you're not a guest. You're staff. The kitchen will provide your meals. You'll eat in your room or the staff dining area, never in the main house. Do you have questions?" About 1,000, but Claire knew which one she was allowed to ask. "When do I meet Mr. Calloway?" "Now." Evelyn turned without waiting, heels clicking against marble floors. Claire followed her through rooms that belonged in a museum. Art that was probably worth more than Claire would earn in a lifetime. Furniture that looked like it would break if you sat on it wrong. Everything cold, everything perfect, everything dead. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, then another to the third. The hallways grew narrower here, the luxury less showy. Evelyn stopped at a heavy wooden door. He has good days and bad days. Today is bad. She knocked once, didn't wait for an answer, and pushed the door open. Vincent, your new caregiver is here. The room beyond was dim, heavy curtains blocking most of the daylight. It took Claire's eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, she saw him. Vincent Calloway sat in a wheelchair near the window, wrapped in a blanket despite the room's warmth. He'd been a big man once. You could tell from the width of his shoulders, the size of his hands, but cancer had carved him down to something else. His skin had that yellowish tint that meant the liver was failing. His eyes, though. His eyes were still sharp, still alive, still taking her apart piece by piece in a single glance. "Get out, Evelyn!" His voice was rough, like gravel under tires. I said get out!" Evelyn's face went tight, but she left without another word. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a threat. Vincent studied Claire in the silence that followed. She forced herself not to fidget, not to look away. She'd worked with dying people before. She knew the difference between someone who'd accepted death and someone still fighting it. Vincent Calloway was fighting. "You're younger than I expected," he said finally. "I'm qualified." "That's not what I asked." He shifted in the wheelchair, and Claire saw the pain flash across his face before he locked it down. "How old are you?" 26. Christ. He almost smiled. "You know who I am?" Vincent Calloway. She'd Googled him, of course. The search results had been carefully scrubbed, but you could read between the lines. Import-export business that nobody believed was just import-export. Connections to construction unions, garbage hauling, the entertainment industry, old Chicago money with roots that went deep and dark. And you took the job anyway. The pay was good. Now he did smile, and it wasn't pleasant. Honest. I like that. Most people in this house wouldn't know honesty if it bit them in the ass. He gestured to a chair near his wheelchair. "Sit down. Let's talk about what you're really here for." Claire sat. The chair was uncomfortable, probably on purpose. "Margaret told me you need a caregiver. Someone to help with the medications, mobility, daily activities." "I'm dying," Vincent cut her off. "Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, spread to the liver and lungs. I've got maybe 6 months, probably less. The pain is already bad enough that I need morphine to sleep. In another month, I won't be able to walk. Month after that, I'll need help eating. By the end, I'll be pissing myself and forgetting my own name. I don't need a caregiver. I need a witness." Claire kept her expression neutral. "A witness to what?" "To the fact that I existed as something other than what they're going to remember." He waved a hand at the door, meaning Evelyn, meaning his daughters, meaning everyone waiting for him to die. "You know what happens when a man like me dies? People rewrite history. They turn me into either a monster or a saint, and neither one is true. I want one person in this house who sees me as I actually am. That's the job. Can you do it?" It was the strangest job description Claire had ever heard, and also the most honest. "I can try." "Good enough." Vincent reached for a glass of water on the side table. His hand shook, and Claire saw him fight to steady it. Pride. Even dying, he had too much pride to ask for help. She stood and brought the glass to him. He took it without thanking her, drank, handed it back. "Tell me something true," he said. "Why'd you really take this job? And don't give me shit about the money. Everyone needs money. What else?" Claire hesitated, but he'd asked for honesty, and something in his dying man's stare made lying seem pointless. "I needed to disappear for a while." "From who?" "An ex-boyfriend who doesn't understand that no means no, debt collectors, a life that wasn't going anywhere." She met his eyes. "I needed to be somewhere nobody would look for me." Vincent nodded slowly. "You picked the right place. Nobody looks too close at this house. They're too afraid of what they might find." He studied her again, and Claire had the uncomfortable feeling of being weighed on some scale she couldn't see. You'll do. But understand something, this family is a snake pit. My wife wants me dead so she can get her hands on the money. My daughters are already fighting over scraps, and I'm not even gone yet. They're going to hate you because you're new, because you're young, because you're here. Don't trust any of them, especially don't trust Victoria. Your daughter? My eldest. She's smart, ambitious, and absolutely ruthless. She's got a boyfriend who's even worse. Derek Holden. You'll meet him soon enough. He thinks he's going to marry Victoria and take over my business interests when I'm gone. Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut. He's wrong, but he doesn't know that yet. What does he think your business is? Real estate mostly, development, property management. It's what we tell people. Vincent's eyes gleamed. You want to know the truth? Do I have a choice? No. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I'm what they call a mafia boss, though nobody uses that word anymore. Too old-fashioned. These days we say organized crime or syndicate leader, or we just talk about business and everyone pretends not to know what we mean. I've run Chicago's underworld for 30 years. Drugs, gambling, protection, union control, contract enforcement. I've killed people, ordered more killed, made fortunes, destroyed lives, built an empire on fear and violence and the willingness to do things other men wouldn't do. He sat back. That's who you're working for. Still want the job? Claire's mouth was dry. She should have been terrified. Maybe she was. But mostly what she felt was a strange sort of relief that someone was finally telling her the truth about something. Yes. Why? Because at least you're not pretending to be something you're not. She surprised herself with the answer, but it was true. Everyone else in my life has been lying about who they are, what they want, what I mean to them. You're the first honest person I've met in years. Vincent laughed, a rough sound that turned into a cough. When he could breathe again, he was grinning. You might be crazier than I thought. That's good. You'll need to be crazy to survive in this house. The door opened without warning. A woman in her late 20s swept in, beautiful in a cold, calculated way. Dark hair, designer clothes, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Father, Evelyn said you were meeting the new... She stopped when she saw Claire, looking her up and down with barely concealed contempt. This is her? She looks like she's 12. Victoria. Vincent's voice went hard. Claire, this is my eldest daughter. Victoria, this is Claire Bennett. She'll be taking care of me for the foreseeable future. Treat her with respect. Victoria's laugh was acid. Respect? For the help? For the woman who's going to be changing my sheets and wiping my ass when I can't do it myself? Yes. Respect. Vincent's eyes locked on his daughter. Or would you prefer to do it yourself? Victoria's face twisted with disgust. Don't be obscene. Then get out. For a moment, Claire thought Victoria might actually refuse. Then the younger woman turned and left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. See what I mean? Vincent said. Snake pit. Over the next few days, Claire learned the geography of her new life. The third floor was her domain, her small but comfortable room, Vincent's much larger suite, a sitting room that nobody used, and a bathroom she shared with no one. The second floor belonged to Evelyn and the daughters. The first floor was public space, formal and cold. The basement was off limits, and when Claire asked why, the housekeeper, a nervous woman named Rosa, just shook her head and walked away. The routine was straightforward. Claire woke at 6, checked Vincent's vitals, helped him with morning medications and hygiene. Breakfast at 7:30, brought up by Rosa. Morning exercises, range of motion, gentle stretching, whatever Vincent could tolerate that day. Lunch at noon. Afternoon rest, dinner at 6, evening medications. Lights out by 9, though Vincent rarely slept before midnight. In between, there were long hours of nothing. Vincent liked to sit by the window and watch the lake. Sometimes he talked. Sometimes he didn't. Claire learned to read his moods, to know when he wanted conversation and when he wanted silence. She also learned that he'd been telling the truth about his family. Evelyn came to check on Vincent exactly once a day, always at the same time, always with the same cold efficiency. She never asked how he was feeling, never touched him, just reviewed his medication schedule with Claire, made sure everything was documented properly, and left. The daughters were worse. Victoria came often, always with Derek in tow. Derek was everything Claire had been warned about: handsome, charming, and hollow as a drum. He talked about the family business like he already owned it, about plans for expansion and modernization. Victoria watched her father like a cat watching a mouse hole, waiting. Samantha, the middle daughter, was different, quieter, harder to read. She worked as a lawyer downtown and visited in the evenings, sitting with Vincent for exactly 30 minutes while saying almost nothing. Claire couldn't tell if she loved her father or hated him or felt nothing at all. Lily, the youngest at 23, was still in graduate school and barely came home. When she did, she avoided Vincent's room entirely. "They can't stand to look at me," Vincent said one afternoon, watching Samantha's car pull away. "I'm a reminder that they're going to die someday too, and they hate me for it." "Do you love them?" Claire asked. Vincent was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. I wanted sons, boys to carry on the name, the business, the legacy. Instead, I got 3 daughters and a wife who made sure I couldn't have more children." His face was bitter. "Evelyn got herself fixed after Lily was born. Didn't tell me until it was done. Said she'd given me 3 chances to get a son and I'd failed, as if it was my fault. It takes 2 to make a baby. Not according to Evelyn. According to her, I'm the one who failed. And maybe she's right. Maybe I am a failure. 30 years building an empire, and I've got no one to leave it to. The business will dissolve the minute I'm dead. Everything I built, gone, like I never existed." Claire didn't know what to say to that. What did you tell a dying king watching his kingdom crumble? 2 weeks into the job, Vincent's condition worsened. The pain increased. The morphine doses went up. He started having bad nights, waking up gasping, convinced he was drowning, fighting Claire when she tried to help him calm down. One night, after a particularly bad episode, he grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise. "I'm not ready," he said, his voice raw. "I'm not fucking ready to die." "I know. Do you?" His grip tightened. "You're what, 26? What the hell do you know about dying?" "I watched my mother die of lung cancer when I was 22. It took 14 months. By the end, she weighed 80 pounds and couldn't remember my name." Claire met his eyes. "I know what you're afraid of. And I know there's no good way through it. Only through." Vincent's grip loosened. He let go, turned away. "Get out." "Mr. Calloway." "I said get out." Claire left. She heard him crying through the door, harsh, angry sobs that sounded like they were being torn out of him. She wanted to go back in, to tell him it was okay to be afraid, to be angry, to fall apart, but she knew he'd never forgive her for witnessing that. Some pride ran too deep to compromise. The next morning, he didn't mention it. Neither did she. 3 weeks in, Claire met Marcus Kane. She'd been told the house had security, but she hadn't really thought about what that meant until the day Vincent asked her to call Marcus up to his room. The man who arrived was 6'4" of solid muscle, with scars that told stories and eyes that had seen things Claire didn't want to imagine. He moved like violence personified, but when he spoke to Vincent, his voice was gentle. "Boss, you needed something? I want you to meet Claire. She's been taking care of me." Vincent gestured between them. "Claire, this is Marcus Kane. He's been with me for 15 years. He's the only person in this house I trust completely." Marcus studied Claire with the same careful assessment the security guard had given her at the gates, but without the contempt. "Ma'am, just Claire is fine." "Marcus doesn't do just fine," Vincent said with something almost like affection. "He's old school that way. Marcus, I need you to keep an eye on Claire. Make sure nobody in this house gives her trouble." "Understood." "I don't need protection," Claire started to say, but Vincent cut her off. "Yes, you do. You just don't know it yet." He looked at Marcus. "Evelyn's been asking questions about her. Victoria, too. I want them to know she's under my protection. Spread the word." Marcus nodded and left without another word. "What kind of questions?" Claire asked. "The kind that mean they see you as a threat." "I'm a caregiver. How am I a threat?" Vincent smiled, but there was no humor in it. You're close to me. You see me every day. I talk to you. That makes you dangerous in a house where information is power and everyone's fighting over crumbs. That night, Claire lay awake in her small room and wondered what she'd actually gotten herself into. The money was real. Her first paycheck had hit her account, and she'd immediately paid off a chunk of her debt. The room was comfortable. The work itself wasn't difficult, at least not physically, but the house felt like a trap slowly closing around her. Evelyn's cold assessment every time their paths crossed. Victoria's barely veiled hostility. The way Derek looked at her sometimes, like he was calculating her value and finding it wanting. Even Rosa seemed nervous around her now, like being associated with Claire was dangerous. Only Vincent and Marcus treated her like a person instead of a problem. A month in, Vincent asked her to do something she hadn't expected. I want you to read to me. Claire looked up from organizing his medications. Read what? Anything. Everything. I don't care. He gestured at the bookshelves lining one wall, old leather-bound volumes that looked like they'd never been opened. I never had time to read when I was building the business. Always too busy, too focused. Now I've got nothing but time, and I can't concentrate long enough to get through a page myself. The morphine makes everything fuzzy. So Claire read. Old novels, poetry, history, philosophy. Books Vincent had bought to look cultured and never touched. She read for hours while he listened with his eyes closed, sometimes drifting off, sometimes commenting, sometimes just present in the silence between words. It became their routine. Mornings were for care and medical needs. Afternoons were for reading and conversation. Evenings were for honesty. That's when Vincent talked about his life. Not the public version, but the real one. The violence, the betrayals, the choices that had made him rich and powerful and alone. He talked about men he'd killed, deals he'd made, lines he'd crossed. He talked about the first time he'd ordered someone's death and how easy it had become after that. You think I'm a monster? He said one evening. I think you're a man who made choices most people don't have to make. That's a diplomatic way of saying yes. Claire set down the book she'd been reading, The Count of Monte Cristo, which Vincent found darkly amusing. You want me to judge you? I want you to be honest. That's the job, remember? Witness to who I actually am. She thought about it. I think you're someone who built a life on fear because you were afraid. I think you pushed everyone away because you were scared they'd leave you first. And I think you're dying alone in a house full of people because that's exactly what you built. Vincent laughed, sharp and bitter. Christ, you don't pull punches, do you? You asked for honesty. Yeah, I did. He was quiet for a while. Then, you're right, about all of it. I spent 30 years making sure everyone feared me, and now I'm shocked that nobody loves me. It's almost funny. It's sad. That too. He looked out at the lake, the water dark under an October sky. You know what I think about most these days? Legacy. What gets left behind when we're gone? I used to think it was power, money, fear, but that all dies the minute I do. It's all just smoke. What do you want to leave behind? Something real, something that matters. He turned to look at her. A son. Claire froze. Mr. Calloway, just listen. I can't have more children with Evelyn. She made sure of that, and even if I could, she'd never agree. She wants me dead, not giving her more competition for the money. But you, he leaned forward. You're young, healthy. You could carry a child. Are you asking me to? I'm asking you to think about it. I'll pay you. Set up a trust. Make sure you and the child are taken care of for life. All I want is a son, an heir, someone to carry my name after I'm gone. Claire stood up, her heart pounding. I need to go. Claire, I need to go. She left before he could say anything else, went to her room, locked the door. Her hands were shaking. The request was insane, impossible, absolutely out of the question, wasn't it? She lay awake all night thinking about the $42,000 in debt, the dead-end jobs, the ex-boyfriend who'd put her in the hospital, the sister who wouldn't return her calls, the life she'd been running from. Vincent was offering her a way out, a future, security for her and a child who didn't even exist yet. All she had to do was agree to carry the baby of a dying mafia boss. By morning, She still hadn't decided, but she knew she hadn't immediately said no, and that told her something she wasn't sure she wanted to know about herself. Vincent didn't bring it up again for 3 days. When he finally did, his approach was different. Clinical. Legal. "I talked to my lawyers," he said. "If you agreed, it would be a contract, everything documented. Everything legal. Artificial insemination, not—" He waved a hand. "Bussy, the other thing. You'd receive $1 million up front. Another $1 million when the child is born. A trust fund for the child, managed by you, worth $10 million. Full medical care, housing, security. And after I die, you'd be protected. Legal guardianship, ironclad." "Why me?" "Because you're not part of this world. You're not from a family connected to the business. You have no loyalty to my enemies, and no reason to try to use the child as leverage. You're perfect because you're nobody." It should have been insulting. Instead, it was just honest. "And if I say no?" "Then you say no. I'm not going to force you, but I will say this. My family is going to tear itself apart when I die. They're going to fight over every dollar, every asset, every scrap of power. If you're here when that happens, you're going to get caught in the crossfire. Having my child would give you protection. They'd have to treat you carefully, because you'd be the mother of my son, my heir. Or they'd see me as an even bigger threat and try to get rid of me." Vincent smiled. "That's why you'd have Marcus and a team of lawyers, and enough money to disappear anywhere in the world if you needed to." He paused. "I'm not going to pretend this isn't complicated. It is. But I'm also not going to pretend I'm not desperate. I am. I'm a dying man who built an empire and has no one to leave it to. This is my last chance." Claire looked at him, really looked at him. The cancer-hollowed body, the yellow-tinged skin, the pain he fought to hide, the desperation in his eyes. "I need time to think," she said. "Take as long as you need, but not too long." He tapped his chest. Clock's ticking. Claire spent a week thinking about it. She researched surrogacy contracts, talked to a lawyer Vincent's people recommended, a woman who specialized in exactly this kind of arrangement and who walked her through every detail with calm professionalism. The contract would be airtight. Claire would have full custody. Vincent would be listed as the father, but he'd have no legal rights beyond what the contract specified. The money would be hers, protected, untouchable. It was insane. It was also the most secure future she'd ever been offered. On a cold November morning, with sleet hitting the windows and Vincent sleeping fitfully in his wheelchair, Claire made her decision. She'd do it. Not because she loved Vincent, not because she believed in his empire or his legacy, but because she was tired of being powerless, tired of running, tired of a life where she had no control over anything. This would give her control. Money, security, a future. She told Vincent that afternoon. He cried. Actually cried. Tears running down his face while he gripped her hand like she was the only solid thing in a drowning world. "Thank you," he said. "Christ, thank you." The process started immediately. Lawyers, doctors, contracts, medical procedures. It was all very clinical, very professional. Vincent's swimmers were viable despite the cancer. One small mercy. 3 weeks later, Claire was pregnant. She didn't tell anyone in the house. Vincent swore Marcus to secrecy. The fewer people who knew, the safer she'd be. At least until Vincent was ready to reveal it. But secrets in the Calloway house didn't stay buried long. Claire was 8 weeks pregnant when Evelyn cornered her in the hallway outside Vincent's room. "I know what you did." Evelyn's voice was quiet, deadly. "I know what he asked you to do." Claire's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I've been married to that man for 30 years. I know when he's hiding something." Evelyn stepped closer. "You're pregnant with his child, aren't you?" There was no point in denying it. "Yes." For a moment, Evelyn just stared at her. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Of course he'd do this. One last middle finger to me before he dies. One last way to cut me out of everything." Her eyes went hard. "How much is he paying you?" "That's between me and Mr. Calloway." "You stupid little girl. Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? Do you think carrying his bastard is going to protect you? It's going to make you a target. My daughters will destroy you.
Derek will destroy you. And when Vincent's dead and buried, I'll make sure you have nothing. The contract says, I don't care what the contract says. Evelyn's facade cracked completely. I've spent 30 years with that man. 30 years building this life, managing his image, cleaning up his messes, playing the devoted wife while he built his empire on blood and bodies. And my reward? 3 daughters who can't inherit because he wanted sons. Now you, some nobody from nowhere, get to give him what I couldn't? She was shaking with rage. You don't deserve this. You haven't earned it. I didn't ask for it. But you took it anyway. Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. Mark my words, girl. That baby will never be born. One way or another, I'll make sure of it. She walked away, heels clicking on marble, leaving Claire frozen in the hallway with her heart pounding and her hands instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. When she told Vincent what had happened, his face went gray. It started, he said quietly. I'd hoped we'd have more time. More time for what? To protect you. He reached for his phone. Marcus needs to know. We need to move you to a different room, one with better security. And we need to tell the others before Evelyn does. Control the narrative. Tell them what? The truth. Vincent's jaw set. That you're pregnant with my child, my son, my heir. You don't know it's a boy. I know. He said it with absolute certainty. Call it intuition, call it wishful thinking, but I know. Vincent called a family meeting for that evening. Mandatory attendance. Claire watched from the 3rd floor landing as they gathered in the living room below. Evelyn, Victoria, Derek, Samantha, even Lily, who'd been summoned home from school. Marcus stood by the door, solid as stone. Vincent descended the stairs in his wheelchair, operated by Claire. He'd refused the morphine that afternoon, wanting to be clear-headed. The pain showed in every line of his body, but his voice was steady. I'm dying, he started, which everyone already knew. I've got maybe 4 months left, probably less, and I've made arrangements for my estate, my business interests, and my legacy. We know, Father, Victoria said. Everything's been discussed with the lawyers. Not everything. Vincent looked at each of them in turn. I'm going to have a son. Silence. Then Evelyn laughed, harsh and broken. Tell them how. Claire's pregnant, carrying my child, due in June. The room exploded. Victoria was on her feet immediately. You can't be serious. You knocked up the help? This is insane, Derek added. Sir, with all respect, this completely changes the estate planning we've been. I don't care about your planning, Derek. You're not family. You have no say. Samantha spoke quietly. Is this legal? Can you just have a child this way? It's completely legal. Documented, contracted, witnessed. Vincent's voice was iron. And he'll be my heir, my son. The Calloway name continues. What about us? Lily's voice was small. What about your daughters? You'll be provided for. The trusts I set up years ago still stand. But the business, the main estate, the primary inheritance, that goes to my son. He's not even born yet. Victoria's face was white with fury. You're going to give everything to a baby that doesn't exist based on the word of some... Careful, Vincent said softly. Claire is under my protection. All of you need to remember that. But Claire could see it in their faces. The hate, the calculation, the determination to make sure this pregnancy ended before it could threaten their inheritance. The war had begun. And Claire, standing at the top of the stairs with Vincent's child growing inside her, knew she'd just become the most dangerous person in the house. The meeting ended with Victoria slamming the door hard enough to crack the frame. Derek followed her out, his face tight with barely controlled rage. Samantha left without a word, and Lily fled upstairs like the house was on fire. Only Evelyn remained standing perfectly still in the center of the room, staring at Vincent with an expression Claire couldn't read. 30 years, Evelyn said finally. 30 years I've given you, and this is how you repay me. You gave up on me a long time ago, Vincent replied. Don't pretend this is about loyalty. It's about respect, something you've never shown me. She turned to look at Claire, still standing on the stairs. Enjoy your moment, dear. It won't last. Then she was gone too, leaving just Vincent, Claire, and Marcus in the sudden quiet.
Vincent slumped in his wheelchair, the effort of the confrontation draining what little energy he had left. Claire started down the stairs to help him back up, but Marcus was already moving, positioning himself behind the chair. "I'll take him up," Marcus said. "You should get some rest." But Claire knew rest wasn't coming anytime soon. She followed them up anyway, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. The baby was barely the size of a plum, but already it had turned her into a target. In Vincent's room, Marcus helped transfer him to the bed while Claire prepared his evening medications. The morphine dose had been increased again yesterday, but Vincent pushed it away. "Not yet. I need to think clearly." "You need to manage your pain," Claire said. "I need to keep you alive." Vincent's eyes were sharp despite the exhaustion. "Marcus, I want security on this floor doubled. 24 hours. Nobody gets near Claire without your approval." "Already done. I've got 2 men stationed at the stairwell and another outside her room." "Good. And I want cameras. In the hallways, near the doors. I want to know every time someone so much as breathes near her." "Vincent, that's excessive," Claire started. "No, it's not." Vincent grabbed her wrist, his grip weak but insistent. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Victoria's already calculating. Derek's probably calling his contacts in the organization right now. And Evelyn." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Evelyn's the most dangerous of all because she's patient. She'll wait for the right moment." "The right moment for what?" "To make sure that baby never gets born." Vincent's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "She meant what she said, and she's got the resources to make it happen." Claire's blood went cold. She'd known the family wouldn't be happy, but she'd somehow thought there were lines they wouldn't cross. Looking at Vincent's face, she realized how naive that was. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. "You trust Marcus. You stay on this floor unless I'm with you. You don't eat or drink anything that hasn't been prepared by Rosa and checked by Marcus first. And you don't, under any circumstances, let yourself be alone with Victoria or Evelyn. I'm a prisoner in this house. You're alive in this house. Let's keep it that way." That night, Claire lay in her bed listening to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, Marcus's men doing their rounds. The house creaked and settled around her, every noise making her flinch. She'd signed up to be a caregiver, not a target. But the contract had been explicit. She carried this baby to term, and Vincent would make sure she and the child were protected for life. The question was whether Vincent would live long enough to keep that promise. The next morning brought the first real attack, though it came dressed as concern. Claire was helping Vincent with his breakfast when Victoria appeared in the doorway, her expression perfectly composed. Gone was last night's rage, replaced by something that looked almost like sympathy. "Father, could I speak with you, privately?" Vincent glanced at Claire, then nodded. "Claire, give us a few minutes." Claire didn't want to leave, but she stepped into the hallway, positioning herself where she could still hear through the partially open door. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," Victoria began, her voice smooth. "And I want to apologize. My reaction was emotional, inappropriate." Cut the bullshit, Victoria. What do you want?" A pause. Then, "I want you to reconsider. Not the child. I understand you want an heir, but the arrangement with Claire. She's a stranger, Father. We don't know anything about her background, her motives, her—" "I know enough." "Do you?" "Because I had Derek run a background check." Papers rustled. "Did you know she was arrested 3 years ago? Assault charges against her ex-boyfriend." Claire's stomach dropped. She'd thought that arrest had been sealed, buried in paperwork that no one would ever find. "The charges were dropped," Victoria continued, "but the arrest report makes interesting reading. Apparently she put him in the hospital. Broken jaw, fractured ribs, concussion. The police report says he claims she attacked him without provocation." "And what did she claim?" Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. "Self-defense. Said he'd been hitting her for months and she finally fought back." "Maybe that's true. Or maybe she's got a violent streak you should know about before you trust her with your child." "Get out." "Father, I said get out. And tell Derek that if he runs another background check on Claire without my permission, I'll make sure he never works in this city again." Victoria's heels clicked as she left. A moment later, Vincent called Claire back in. She entered slowly, waiting for the questions, the accusations. But Vincent just looked at her steadily. Is it true? About the arrest? No point in lying. Yes. Want to tell me what happened? Claire sat down, her hands clasped tight in her lap. His name was Ryan. We dated for 2 years. The first year was good. The second, she swallowed. He started drinking more, getting angry. The first time he hit me, he apologized for a week straight. Bought me flowers, took me to dinner, swore it would never happen again. But it did. Every few weeks, then every few days. I tried to leave twice. Both times he found me, brought me back, promised he'd change. Her voice was flat now, reciting facts. The night I got arrested, he came home drunk and decided I'd been cheating on him. No evidence, no reason, just convinced himself it was true. He started hitting me, and I stopped trying to just defend myself. I fought back, really fought back. By the time I was done, he was unconscious on the kitchen floor. So you called the police. He called the police. When he woke up, Claire's laugh was bitter. Told them I'd attacked him out of nowhere. They believed him at first because he was bigger, more credible, a man with a steady job and no record. I was just his unstable girlfriend with a history of depression. But the charges were dropped. Eventually, my lawyer got the hospital records showing old injuries, broken bones, bruises in various stages of healing. Got my medical records showing I'd been treated for accidents multiple times. Got statements from neighbors who'd heard us fighting, heard me screaming. The prosecutor finally decided not to pursue it. She met Vincent's eyes. But the arrest stayed on my record, made it hard to find decent work, made people look at me like I was dangerous. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then, good. Claire blinked. What? Good that you fought back. Good that you didn't just lie there and take it. Good that you're dangerous when you need to be. He leaned forward. That baby you're carrying? He's going to need a mother who knows how to fight. This world isn't kind to the weak, Claire. You already know that. So yeah, I'm glad you put that bastard in the hospital. I just wish you'd hit him harder. Something in Claire's chest loosened. She'd spent 3 years feeling guilty about that night, wondering if she'd gone too far, if she really was the violent one. Hearing Vincent, a man who'd built an empire on violence, tell her she'd done the right thing felt like absolution she hadn't known she needed. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me. Just stay dangerous. You're going to need it. But Victoria wasn't done. That afternoon, while Claire was helping Vincent with his physical therapy exercises, Evelyn appeared with a man Claire had never seen before. Middle-aged, expensive suit, the kind of professional smile that never reached the eyes. Vincent, this is Dr. Harrison Chen. He's a specialist in high-risk pregnancies. I've arranged for him to examine Claire. Vincent's jaw tightened. Claire already has a doctor. A general practitioner. Dr. Chen is the best in the city. Given Claire's situation, I thought it would be prudent to have someone more experienced involved. Evelyn's smile was poisonous. Unless you don't care about the health of your child. It was a trap, and they all knew it. Refuse, and Vincent looked like he didn't care about the pregnancy. Accept, and let Evelyn's chosen doctor get access to Claire. Fine, Vincent said finally. But Marcus stays in the room during the examination. Dr. Chen's professional smile flickered. That's highly irregular. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. The examination took place in Claire's room. Dr. Chen was thorough, professional, asking questions about her medical history while checking her blood pressure, listening to her heart. Marcus stood in the corner like a sentinel, watching everything. Everything seems normal, Dr. Chen said finally. Though at 8 weeks it's still early. Anything could happen. Something in the way he said it made Claire's skin crawl. What do you mean? She asked. Just that first trimester miscarriages are quite common, especially in women with high stress levels. And I imagine this situation is quite stressful. He packed his equipment. I'd recommend bed rest, minimal activity, and perhaps some medication to help with anxiety. I don't have anxiety. Not yet, but carrying a child under these circumstances. He glanced at Marcus, then back to Claire. It's a lot of pressure. The medication would help. Just something mild to take the edge off. Claire looked at Vincent, who gave the slightest shake of his head. I'll think about it, she said.
After Dr. Chen left, Vincent had Marcus follow him out. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, and get me a copy of whatever he put in his report to Evelyn. Marcus nodded and disappeared. You think he's trying to hurt the baby? Claire asked. I think Evelyn brought him here for a reason, and it wasn't out of concern for your health. Vincent was struggling to breathe, the pain getting worse. Claire helped him take his medication, watched him swallow the pills with shaking hands. Don't take anything he prescribes. Don't let him examine you again unless I'm conscious and present. You think she'd really try to poison me, her own husband's child? That baby threatens everything she's built, her social position, her financial security, her daughter's inheritance. Yeah, I think she'd do whatever it takes to protect that. Vincent's eyes were heavy with the morphine starting to work. You're at war now, Claire, and in war, there are no rules. The next attack came 3 days later, more subtle, but just as dangerous. Claire was in the kitchen getting Vincent's lunch when she noticed Rosa acting strange. The housekeeper kept glancing at the door, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared the tray. Rosa, are you okay? Fine, miss, just fine. But her voice was too high, too nervous. Claire reached for the tray, and Rosa actually flinched. What's wrong? Nothing. Mrs.
Calloway wanted to make sure Mr. Vincent got his favorite soup today. Special recipe. Rosa's eyes were pleading. Please, miss, just take it up to him. Every instinct Claire had was screaming. She picked up the tray, smiled at Rosa, and carried it upstairs. But instead of going to Vincent's room, she went to Marcus. Something's wrong with the food. Marcus didn't ask questions. He took the tray, disappeared for 20 minutes, and came back with his face like stone. Oleander extract, mixed into the soup, enough to cause severe abdominal cramping, vomiting, potential miscarriage in a pregnant woman. Not enough to kill, but definitely enough to end the pregnancy. Claire sat down hard, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. Rosa's daughter lives in Naperville, works as a teacher, has 2 kids. Someone probably reminded her how easy it would be for something bad to happen to her family. Marcus set the tray down carefully. I'll handle Rosa. You need to tell Vincent. Vincent took the news with grim resignation. It started sooner than I expected. He was having a bad day, barely able to sit up, his skin the color of old paper. They're testing your defenses, seeing how close they can get. What do we do? We make it clear that there are consequences. Vincent reached for his phone with trembling hands. Get me Derek. 10 minutes later, Derek appeared, trying to look casual and failing. Sir, you wanted to see me? Someone tried to poison Claire today. Poison my child. Vincent's voice was weak, but his eyes were hard. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Derek's face went pale. Of course not. Why would I? Because you're in love with Victoria, and you think marrying her will give you access to my empire. Because you've been meeting with my competitors. Because you're stupid enough to think I don't know everything that happens in this house. Vincent leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to find out who gave Rosa that poison. You're going to make sure it never happens again. And you're going to convince Victoria that Claire and the baby are off limits. Do you understand? Sir, I can't control what Victoria... But then you're no use to me. Marcus, Derek was just leaving. Permanently. Derek's face went white. Wait, I'll talk to her. I'll make sure You have 24 hours to prove you're worth keeping around. After that, if anything happens to Claire or that baby, I'll assume you failed. And you know what happens to people who fail me. Derek practically ran from the room. After he left, Vincent slumped back against his pillows, exhausted from the effort. Will it work? Claire asked. Maybe. Derek's ambitious, but he's not stupid. He knows I can still destroy him even from a hospital bed. Vincent's breathing was labored. But Evelyn won't stop. She's too smart to get her hands dirty directly. She'll find other ways. How long can we keep fighting them off? As long as we have to. Vincent reached out, his hand finding hers. I'm not going to let them hurt you, Claire. Or the baby. Whatever it takes. But they both knew time was running out. Vincent's cancer was advancing faster than the doctors had predicted. He was sleeping 18 hours a day now, the morphine doses creeping higher and higher. Claire could see him fading, bit by bit, day by day. 2 weeks later, Vincent collapsed. Claire found him on the floor of his bathroom, unconscious, barely breathing. She screamed for Marcus, called 911, tried to remember her first aid training while panic clawed at her throat. The ambulance came. The hospital admitted him. The doctors said the cancer had spread further, that his liver was failing, that they could make him comfortable, but there was nothing else they could do. Vincent stayed in the hospital for 5 days. When he came home, it was in a medical transport, with hospice equipment and a timeline measured in weeks, not months. Claire had thought the house was hostile before. Now it felt like a tomb. Evelyn moved through the halls like a ghost, planning a funeral that hadn't happened yet. Victoria and Derek came by daily, their visits feeling more like surveillance than concern. Even Samantha seemed to be calculating, measuring, preparing for the inevitable. Claire spent every moment she could with Vincent, reading to him when he was conscious, just sitting beside him when he wasn't. The baby was 13 weeks now, just starting to show. Vincent would sometimes put his hand on her stomach, feeling for movement that was still too early to detect. "Promise me something," he said one afternoon, his voice barely above a whisper. "Anything. When I'm gone, get out of this house. Don't stay here trying to fight them. Take the money, take the baby, and disappear. London, Paris, anywhere they can't reach you easily. The lawyers will handle everything else. Just go." "Vincent, promise me, Claire." She promised, even though she wasn't sure she could keep it. That night, Victoria came to Claire's room. It was late, past midnight, and Claire had been dozing in her chair when the knock came. "We need to talk." Victoria's voice was different, tired, almost human. Against her better judgment, Claire let her in. Marcus was right outside, so she wasn't alone. Victoria sat down, looked at her hands, looked up. "He's really dying." "Yes. I don't know what I thought, that he'd beat it somehow, that he was too stubborn to die." Victoria's laugh was broken. "Stupid, right?" "Not stupid. Human. I never told him I loved him." The words came out in a rush. "I was so angry for so many years about not being the son he wanted that I never just told him I loved him anyway." Claire didn't know what to say to that. Victoria had spent months making her life hell, and now she was supposed to feel sympathy? "It's not too late," she said finally. "He's still here." "No, he's not. Not really. He's already gone somewhere I can't follow." Victoria stood up, wiped her eyes. "I came here to warn you. Evelyn's planning something. I don't know what, but she's been meeting with people, making calls. She wants you gone, Claire, and she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because whatever else I am, I'm Vincent's daughter. And that baby you're carrying is his son, my brother." Victoria's face was complex, conflicted. "I don't like you. I don't want you here, but I also don't want my mother to win. Not this time." She left before Claire could respond. The next morning, Vincent couldn't wake up. The hospice nurse said it was the morphine, the cancer, the body starting to shut down. He might come back for a few hours. He might not wake up at all. Claire sat beside him, holding his hand, feeling the baby flutter inside her for the first time. A tiny movement, like butterfly wings. "Vincent," she whispered, "the baby's moving." His eyes opened just slightly. He couldn't speak anymore, but his fingers squeezed hers. She put his hand on her stomach, and they sat there together, waiting. The flutter came again, stronger this time. Vincent smiled. Actually smiled, tears running down his face. "That's your son," Claire said. "He's saying hello." Vincent's lips moved. She had to lean close to hear. "Protect him." "I will. I promise." His eyes closed again. This time, they didn't open. 3 days later, on a cold December morning, Vincent Calloway died. Claire was with him at the end, along with Marcus and the hospice nurse. Evelyn was downstairs. The daughters were somewhere else. When Vincent took his last breath, it was just Claire holding his hand, keeping her promise to witness who he really was until the very end. She cried. Not for the Mafia boss, or the dying king, or the man who'd built an empire on fear. She cried for the broken person underneath all that, the one who'd just wanted to be remembered, to matter, to leave something behind that was real. The funeral was set for 5 days later. In the meantime, the lawyers descended. Vincent's will was read in the formal living room, the whole family present. Claire sat in the back, Marcus beside her, feeling like an intruder at her own execution. The lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Moore, went through the provisions with clinical precision. Trust for the daughters, sums that were generous but not empire-changing. The house and its contents to Evelyn, with stipulations. Various business interests divided among trusted associates. And then, to my son, currently in utero and expected to arrive in June, I leave the remainder of my estate to be held in trust and managed by his mother, Claire Bennett, until he reaches the age of 25. This includes my primary holdings, investment portfolio, and controlling interest in all legitimate business ventures. Claire Bennett is to receive full legal guardianship, $5 million immediately upon my death, and an additional $10 million upon the birth of my son. She is also granted use of the London property and full security detail to be maintained in perpetuity. The room exploded. Victoria was screaming. Derek was calculating. Evelyn sat perfectly still, her face a mask. Samantha spoke first. We're contesting this. Obviously. You're welcome to try, Patricia said calmly. But I should warn you that Mr. Calloway anticipated challenges. The will has been structured to withstand any legal contest. DNA testing will be performed after the birth to confirm paternity, but the child was conceived via documented artificial insemination using Mr. Calloway's genetic material. Everything is legally sound. This is insane, Victoria said. You're giving our father's fortune to a stranger and a baby that doesn't even exist yet. I'm executing your father's wishes as he explicitly stated them. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice like ice. When is the child due? June 20th, Claire said quietly. Such a long time. Evelyn smiled. So many things can happen in 6 months. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. That night, Marcus came to Claire's room with a bag already packed. We're leaving, now. What? Why? Because Vincent left instructions. If anything happens to him, I get you out of Chicago immediately. Marcus was moving fast, checking the hallway, the windows. There's a car waiting. We drive to a private airfield. You're on a plane to London in 2 hours. I can't just leave. You can and you will. Vincent spent the last month of his life setting this up. Fake trail, decoy flights, the whole thing. By the time Evelyn figures out you're gone, you'll be in a house in Kensington with security that would make the Secret Service jealous. Claire looked around her small room, the place that had been her refuge and her prison for the last 4 months. Then she thought about the baby inside her, already moving, already real. Okay, she said. Let's go. They made it as far as the highway before the ambush came. 2 cars, black SUVs, boxing them in at 70 miles an hour. Marcus swore and floored it, but more vehicles appeared ahead, cutting off their escape. Gunfire shattered the back window. Claire screamed, ducking down as Marcus swerved, trying to find a way out. But they were surrounded, trapped. Stay down, Marcus shouted, pulling his own gun. The world became noise and chaos. Metal screeching, glass breaking, Marcus firing back while trying to keep them on the road. Claire curled around her stomach, protecting the baby, praying to anyone who would listen. Then they were off the highway, Marcus somehow forcing their damaged car onto an exit ramp. One of the SUVs followed. The others fell back, blocked by traffic. Marcus made it another mile before their engine started smoking. He pulled into an abandoned parking lot, grabbed Claire, and ran. Behind them, car doors slammed. Footsteps followed. They made it to a warehouse through a broken door, into darkness. Marcus was bleeding from somewhere, leaving a trail Claire could see even in the dim light. Listen to me, he said, breathing hard. There's a phone in my jacket pocket. Speed dial 1 gets you Patricia Moore. Tell her you're using Protocol 7. She'll know what to do. Marcus, I'm going to buy you time. You run. You get to that airfield. You get on that plane. I can't leave you. Yes, you can. That's the job. Vincent trusted me to get you out, and I'm not failing him now. Marcus pushed the phone into her hand. Go. Run. Don't look back. He moved toward the door, toward the footsteps getting closer. Claire ran the other way, deeper into the warehouse, her hand clutched around the phone and her heart breaking with every step. Behind her, she heard gunfire, shouting, more gunfire, then silence. Claire kept running, tears streaming down her face, one hand on her stomach, and Vincent's last protector buying her escape with his life. She made it out the back, found a street, called Patricia Moore. "Protocol 7, she gasped. "Marcus said Protocol 7. Where are you?" Claire looked around, found a street sign. "Industrial District, near the docks. Stay on the line. Help is coming." 20 minutes later, a different car pulled up. Different men, but their eyes had the same look Marcus's had. Loyal, professional, ready to die if necessary. They got her to the airfield. Got her on Vincent's private jet. Got her in the air while somewhere behind them, the city that had been her prison, fell away into the night. Claire sat in the leather seat, looking out at the darkness, feeling the baby move inside her. Marcus was dead. Vincent was dead. She was alone, pregnant, flying toward a country she'd never seen, carrying the heir to an empire built on blood. But she was alive. The baby was alive. And somewhere in the cargo hold, locked in a safe, was Vincent's final letter, the one Patricia had given her along with the phone, the one she was supposed to read when she was safe. Claire opened it with shaking hands. The handwriting was shaky but clear, Vincent's last words written during one of his final conscious moments. "Claire," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you're on your way to London." "Good. That means Marcus did his job, and you're still alive. That's all that matters now. I need you to understand something. I spent my whole life afraid. Afraid of being weak, afraid of being forgotten, afraid that when I died, it would be like I never existed. I built an empire because I thought power would make me matter. I hurt people because I thought fear was the same as respect. I pushed away everyone who might have loved me because I was too afraid they'd leave first. Then you came along. A stranger who had no reason to care whether I lived or died, who saw me at my worst and didn't turn away. You gave me something I'd never had before, simple human kindness. No agenda, no fear, just kindness. Because of that, I started to believe that maybe my son could be different, that he could grow up free from the fear that made me who I am, free from the violence, the hatred, the constant war. I'm leaving you everything I can to make sure that happens. Money, protection, resources. But the real gift is the choice. You can raise him to continue what I built, or you can raise him to end it. You can teach him to rule through fear, or you can teach him that kindness is stronger. I'm trusting you with my legacy, Claire. Make it better than I ever could. Make him better than I ever was. Vincent. Claire folded the letter carefully, pressing it against her chest as the plane carried her toward morning, toward safety, toward a future that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The war wasn't over. Evelyn would keep hunting, the family would keep fighting. But for tonight, in this moment suspended between earth and sky, Claire and Vincent's son were safe, and that would have to be enough. London greeted Claire with rain and gray skies that matched her exhaustion. The plane touched down at a private airfield outside the city just after dawn, and she stumbled down the steps with legs that barely remembered how to walk. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd hit it during the chase, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus raising his gun, heard the gunfire that followed. A woman waited beside a black car, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of competence that didn't need to announce itself. She stepped forward as Claire approached. "Miss Bennett, I'm Sarah Walsh. Mr. Calloway retained me to handle your security and logistics here in London." Her accent was crisp, British, no nonsense. "How are you feeling?" "Like I just watched someone die so I could escape." Sarah's expression softened slightly. Marcus Kane was a good man. He knew the risks. "That doesn't make him less dead." "No, it doesn't." Sarah opened the car door. "Let's get you somewhere safe. You can fall apart there if you need to." The house in Kensington was nothing like the Chicago mansion. Smaller, older, tucked away on a quiet street lined with trees that were bare for winter. Inside it was warm, furnished but not ostentatious, with the kind of comfort that came from being actually lived in rather than staged for show. "Mr. Calloway purchased this property 8 years ago," Sarah explained as she gave Claire a quick tour.
He used it occasionally for business meetings, but mostly it sat empty. The staff has been preparing it for your arrival. There's a bedroom suite on the second floor, fully stocked kitchen, security system that would take a professional team hours to breach. You'll be safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign, impossible. Claire followed Sarah upstairs to a bedroom that was larger than her entire Chicago apartment had been. Someone had already unpacked her meager belongings, hung her clothes in the closet like she was someone who mattered. The doctor will be here in an hour to check on you and the baby, Sarah continued. Patricia Moore has already wired the first installment of your funds, $5 million, as specified in the will. The rest will come after the birth, pending paternity confirmation. They're really going to make me prove it's Vincent's child. Standard procedure. The DNA testing will be quick and definitive. Until then, you have more than enough resources to establish yourself here. Sarah handed her a folder. Bank information, contact numbers, legal documentation, everything you need. And this? She pulled out a phone. Encrypted, untraceable. My number is programmed in. If you need anything, anytime, you call me. Claire took the phone with numb fingers. What about Chicago? What about Evelyn and the others? Patricia is handling them. They're contesting the will as expected, but they won't get far. Mr. Calloway was very thorough. Sarah paused. They also know you left the country, though they don't know where you are yet. Patricia's team planted false trails, Geneva, Dubai, Singapore. It'll take them time to work out you're in London. And when they do, we'll be ready. Sarah's voice was steel wrapped in silk. This house is a fortress, Ms. Bennett. The security team is former SAS. You have lawyers, resources, and most importantly, you have distance. They can't reach you here the way they could in Chicago. After Sarah left, Claire sat on the bed and let herself shake. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion and grief that felt like drowning. Marcus was dead because of her, because of this baby, because Vincent had been so desperate for a son that he'd put everyone around him in danger. She put her hand on her stomach, feeling the slight swell there. 15 weeks now. The baby was the size of an apple, growing stronger every day, completely unaware that people had already died protecting him. I'm sorry, Claire whispered. I'm so sorry you're starting life like this. The baby moved, a flutter of response. Claire closed her eyes and cried until she had nothing left. The doctor arrived as promised, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, who didn't ask questions about the bruises on Claire's shoulder or why she'd flown halfway around the world while pregnant. She just did her examination, confirmed everything looked healthy, and prescribed rest. You've been through significant stress, Dr. Patel said gently. Your blood pressure is elevated, and you're showing signs of exhaustion. I want you on bed rest for at least a week. No arguments. Claire didn't have the energy to argue anyway. The first week passed in a blur of sleep and nightmares. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in that car, hearing gunfire, running through the warehouse while Marcus died buying her time. She'd wake up gasping, heart racing, sure that someone had found her. But the house stayed quiet. The security team stayed invisible. And slowly, in small increments, Claire started to believe she might actually be safe. Sarah visited daily, always with updates. Patricia had filed the necessary paperwork to establish Claire's residency in the UK. The trust fund had been activated. The Chicago house was being sold, with proceeds going to Evelyn and the daughters as a gesture of goodwill that Patricia hoped would ease some of the hostility. Will it work? Claire asked. Sarah's expression said everything. Evelyn accepted the money. Victoria is still making noise about contesting the will. Derek's been surprisingly quiet, which makes me nervous. And Samantha hired her own investigator to find you. Great. We're monitoring all of them. If any of them book a flight to London, we'll know immediately. Sarah set down a stack of mail. Also, this came for you, from Patricia. Inside the envelope was a death certificate, Marcus Kane, killed in the line of duty, and a brief note. Marcus's family has been taken care of. Funeral expenses, trust fund for his daughter's education, everything. Per Vincent's instructions. Just thought you'd want to know. Claire pressed the death certificate to her chest. Marcus had a daughter, a child who would grow up without her father because he'd chosen to protect Claire instead. The guilt was suffocating. It wasn't your fault, Sarah said quietly. Marcus made his choice. He believed in what he was protecting. A baby that didn't even exist yet. An empire built on crime and violence. What was there to believe in? A chance for something different. Sarah's voice was firm. Vincent Calloway was many things, most of them terrible, but in you and that child, he saw a chance to create something better than himself. Marcus believed in that. So did Vincent. Maybe you should try believing in it too. After Sarah left, Claire opened Vincent's letter again, reading his words about fear and kindness and making his son better than he'd been. It sounded good on paper, but how was she supposed to raise a child free from violence when violence had already shaped his existence before he was even born? The second week brought a different kind of problem. Morning sickness that should have been fading came back with a vengeance, worse than before. Claire spent 3 days barely able to keep down water, weak and dizzy, and terrified something was wrong with the baby. Dr. Patel came immediately when Sarah called. "It's stress," the doctor said after checking Claire's vitals. "Your body is reacting to everything you've been through. The baby is fine, but you need to find a way to manage this anxiety, or it's going to get worse." "How am I supposed to manage anxiety when people are literally trying to kill me?" Dr. Patel smiled slightly. "Therapy might help. I know someone who specializes in trauma. Completely confidential, very good at her job." Claire wanted to say no, but the nightmares were getting worse, and she was barely sleeping, and Dr. Patel was right. The stress was eating her alive. The therapist's name was Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, and she worked out of a townhouse in Chelsea. Claire went to her first appointment with Sarah driving and 2 security guards following at a discreet distance. Dr. Morrison was older, white hair, gentle eyes, the kind of person who made you want to tell them everything. "Sarah briefed me on your situation," she said after Claire settled into a comfortable chair, though obviously she left out specifics. "What I know is that you're pregnant, you've experienced recent trauma, and you're in hiding from dangerous people. Is that accurate?" That's the short version. And the long version? Something about Dr. Morrison's calm presence made the story spill out. Not all of it. Claire wasn't stupid enough to confess to Vincent's criminal empire. But enough. The difficult pregnancy circumstances, the hostile family, the escape, Marcus's death. By the end, Claire was crying again, and Dr. Morrison was just listening, not judging, not offering empty comfort. "You're grieving," Dr. Morrison said finally. "For Marcus, for Vincent, for the life you thought you'd have. And you're terrified of what comes next. All of that is completely normal given what you've been through." Normal doesn't make it easier. No, but understanding it helps. Dr. Morrison leaned forward slightly. "You've spent months in survival mode, Claire. Fight or flight, constantly on alert, never safe enough to process what's happening. Your body is exhausted, your mind is exhausted, and you're trying to grow a baby in the middle of all that chaos. Something has to give. I can't give, I have to keep going. Then let's find a way for you to keep going without burning out completely." Dr. Morrison pulled out a notebook. "We're going to work on trauma processing, anxiety management, and building a support system. You can't do this alone. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. It just might not be the one you want." Claire started seeing Dr. Morrison twice a week. Slowly, incrementally, the nightmares became less frequent. The panic attacks started to ease. She learned breathing techniques, grounding exercises, ways to calm her racing heart when the fear got too loud. But the therapy couldn't change the reality of her situation. She was still alone, still pregnant, still hiding from people who wanted her and the baby dead. The call came in late January when Claire was 20 weeks pregnant and finally starting to show in a way that couldn't be hidden under loose clothing. Patricia Moore's voice on the encrypted phone was tense. "We have a problem." Claire's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Derek Holden left Chicago 3 days ago. We lost track of him in New York, but airport records show he flew to London yesterday under an alias." "What, he's here? In London?" "We're working to locate him now. In the meantime, I need you to stay in the house. Don't go anywhere. Don't open the door for anyone except Sarah or someone she's personally verified. Understood?" Claire looked out the window at the quiet street, suddenly feeling exposed despite the security system and the guards. "How did he find me?" "We're not sure yet, but Derek's connected, and he's motivated.
Victoria's been putting pressure on him to find you and solve the problem before the baby's born. Patricia's voice softened slightly. I know this is frightening, but Sarah's team is excellent. They'll keep you safe. After the call ended, Claire sat in the growing darkness and tried not to panic. Derek was here, in London, hunting her. Sarah arrived within the hour, bringing additional security and a plan. We're locking down the house completely. No one in or out except essential personnel. The guards are armed. The perimeter is being monitored 24/7. And I'm staying here with you until we locate Derek and neutralize the threat. Neutralize? Claire asked. What does that mean? It means we make sure he can't hurt you. Sarah's voice was flat. Derek made a choice when he came here. Now he has to live with the consequences. The next 3 days were the longest of Claire's life. Trapped in the house, jumping at every sound, watching the street through the windows and imagining Derek out there somewhere, planning, waiting. Sarah barely left her side. They ate meals together, watched terrible television together, played cards to pass the time. Claire learned that Sarah had worked for Vincent for 6 years, handling his UK operations with quiet efficiency. That she'd lost her own husband to violence 5 years ago. That she'd promised Vincent on his deathbed she'd keep Claire and the baby safe no matter what. Why? Claire asked one evening. Why make that promise? You barely knew me. Because Vincent believed you were different, and I trusted his judgment on people. Sarah smiled slightly. Also, I met you. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone harder, more calculating, someone who'd gotten pregnant by a crime boss for the money and the power. Sarah shook her head. Instead, you're just a woman who made a desperate choice and is trying to survive the consequences. That I can respect. The breakthrough came on the 4th day. Sarah got a call, spoke in rapid undertones, then turned to Claire with a grim expression. We found him. Derek's staying at a hotel in Bloomsbury. He's been making calls back to Chicago, meeting with some unsavory contacts. We intercepted his communications. What was he planning? Sarah hesitated. He was trying to hire someone to break into the house, injure you badly enough that you'd miscarry but not die. Make it look like a random break-in. Claire felt sick. What do we do? Patricia's already handled it. Derek's on a flight back to Chicago as we speak, with a very clear message from Vincent's remaining associates that if he sets foot in the UK again, he won't leave alive. And Victoria's been informed that any further attempts on your life will result in her trust fund being frozen permanently. Will that stop them? For now. They're calculating the cost-benefit ratio. As long as the cost of hurting you outweighs the benefit of eliminating the competition, you're safe. Sarah's smile was sharp. Vincent built a lot of fail-safes into his will. He really did think of everything. After Derek's failed attempt, something shifted in Claire. The fear was still there, but underneath it grew something harder. Anger, determination. She was tired of being hunted, tired of running, tired of letting Vincent's family control her life. She started preparing. Reading books about childbirth, about newborn care, about single parenting. She took online classes. She set up the nursery in one of the spare bedrooms, painting the walls herself in soft gray and white, assembling furniture with Sarah's help. Doctor. Patel did the anatomy scan at 22 weeks, and there it was on the screen. Definitive proof that Vincent had been right. It's a boy, Dr. Patel said, smiling. Healthy, growing well, everything looks perfect. Claire stared at the screen, at the tiny hands and feet, the profile that already looked startlingly human. Vincent's son. Her son. A person who would exist in the world in less than 4 months. Can I have a picture? She asked. Dr. Patel printed several, and Claire kept one in her wallet, pulling it out whenever the fear got too loud. This was what mattered. Not the money, not the empire, not the violence. Just this small person who deserved a chance at a life better than the one that created him. February became March. Claire's belly grew round and obvious. She felt the baby kick, then punch, then what felt like full-on acrobatics at 3 a.m. She ate ice cream and pickles not because of pregnancy cravings, but because they were the only things that sounded good. She waddled instead of walked. She peed constantly. She was exhausted and uncomfortable and terrified and somehow, despite everything, occasionally happy. Dr. Morrison called it progress. Claire called it survival. The next threat came from an unexpected direction. In late March, Sarah came to Claire with a tablet showing a news article from a Chicago paper. Socialite Victoria Calloway announces engagement to businessman Derek Holden. Wedding planned for May. Vos says. Claire read the article twice. She's marrying him after he failed to kill me? Apparently, Patricia thinks it's a strategic move. Victoria's consolidating power, showing the Chicago families that she's stable, in control, ready to take over her father's interests. Derek gets legitimacy and access to what's left of the Calloway empire. It's a business deal dressed up as a romance. Will it work? Depends on whether you have that baby. Sarah's voice was blunt. Right now, they're operating on the assumption that something will go wrong with your pregnancy, that you'll miscarry or have complications or the baby won't survive. If that happens, they inherit everything. But if you successfully give birth to a healthy son, then I win and they lose. Essentially, Sarah closed the tablet, which means the next 2 months are critical. They're going to make one more push to stop this baby from being born. I can feel it. Claire put her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick against her palm. Let them try. I'm not losing this child, not after everything. But the next attack didn't come the way Claire expected. It came through the mail. Sarah intercepted it, an envelope addressed to Claire, postmarked from Chicago, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Claire's sister, Amy, the one who hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. She was coming out of a grocery store in suburban Milwaukee, carrying bags, unaware she was being photographed. On the back, in neat handwriting, was a message. Such a lovely sister you have. It would be a shame if anything happened to her. Drop the claim to Vincent's estate, leave the country, and she stays safe. Refuse, and well, accidents happen. Claire's hands were shaking so hard Sarah had to take the photo from her. This is Evelyn's work, Sarah said grimly. Victoria's too direct for this kind of psychological warfare, but Evelyn knows exactly where to apply pressure. I have to warn Amy. Patricia's already on it. She's arranging protection, though your sister may not appreciate it if she doesn't know why it's necessary. Claire felt something inside her crack. Amy had cut her out years ago, said she was tired of Claire's drama and bad choices, but she was still Claire's sister, still family, even if that family was broken. I need to call her. Claire, I need to call her. She deserves to know that she's in danger because of me. Sarah handed her a phone. Make it quick. Don't tell her where you are, and don't be surprised if she doesn't react well. Amy answered on the third ring, her voice suspicious. Hello? Amy, it's Claire. Silence. Then, how did you get this number? That doesn't matter. Listen, you're in danger. There are people watching you, and they might try to hurt you to get to me. I've arranged for protection, but you need to be careful. What the hell are you talking about? What did you do, Claire? I can't explain everything, but please, just trust me. Stay somewhere public. Don't go home alone. And if anyone approaches you or you notice anyone following you, call the police immediately. Jesus Christ, Claire, are you on drugs? Is this another one of your disasters? Amy's voice was sharp with old anger. I told you 3 years ago I was done with your drama. I meant it. Don't call me again. The line went dead. Claire sat there with the phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. She'd expected Amy to be angry, but the dismissal hurt worse than any threat from Evelyn ever could. I told you, Sarah said quietly. I had to try. I know. Sarah took the phone back. For what it's worth, Patricia's team will keep her safe whether she cooperates or not. We're not going to let Evelyn hurt an innocent person just to get to you. But the damage was done. Claire spent the rest of the day in bed, crying for the sister she'd lost, for the family she'd never have, for all the bridges she'd burned trying to survive. The baby kicked, as if trying to comfort her. Claire put her hand over the movement and whispered, "At least I have you. That has to be enough." April brought warmer weather and new complications. Claire was 32 weeks pregnant now, uncomfortable and huge, and counting down the days until she could meet the baby who'd turned her entire life upside down. Dr. Patel increased her appointment frequency to twice a week, monitoring for any signs of early labor or complications. Everything looked good, but the stress of the constant threats was taking a toll. "Your blood pressure is climbing again," Dr. Patel said during one visit. "I'm concerned about preeclampsia. If it gets worse, we may need to induce early." "How early?" "Ideally not before 36 weeks. But if your health is at risk, we'll do what we need to do." Dr. Patel's expression was kind but firm. "The baby has excellent chances now if we needed to deliver. He's measuring well, all his systems are developed. But I'd rather you both make it to full term if possible." Claire left the appointment feeling like a time bomb. Every day counted now. Every day the baby stayed inside was another day closer to safety, another day further from the people trying to stop him from being born. The wedding announcement came in early May. Victoria and Derek married in a lavish ceremony at the Chicago mansion, surrounded by the same people who'd worked with Vincent for decades. The photos showed Victoria in white lace, Derek in an expensive suit, both of them smiling like they'd won. "They think it's over," Sarah said, studying the pictures. "They think you're going to fail, that the stress will cause complications, that the baby won't survive, that their patience will be rewarded." "Good," Claire said. "Let them think that. Let them plan their victory. And then when this baby is born healthy and screaming, they can choke on their assumptions." Sarah grinned. "I knew I liked you." But that night, alone in her room with the baby doing gymnastics against her ribs, Claire wasn't sure if she was brave or just desperate. The finish line was so close, less than 6 weeks until her due date. 6 weeks to keep herself and the baby safe. 6 weeks to prove that Vincent's faith in her hadn't been misplaced. She read his letter again, the pages worn now from constant handling. "Make him better than I ever was." "I'm trying," Claire whispered to the empty room. "I'm really trying." The final threat came on a Tuesday in late May, when Claire was 36 weeks pregnant and so uncomfortable she could barely sleep. Sarah burst into her bedroom at 6 in the morning, phone in hand, face grim. "Samantha Calloway is in London. Landed at Heathrow 3 hours ago." Claire struggled to sit up, her pregnant belly making everything difficult. "Samantha? Not Victoria?" "Samantha. She's staying at the Dorchester. Patricia's team is monitoring her, but we don't know why she's here or what she's planning." Sarah helped Claire to her feet. "I need you packed and ready to move in 30 minutes. We're not taking chances." "Move where?" "Safe house outside the city. Somewhere she can't find, can't trace. You stay there until the baby's born, then we reassess." Claire wanted to argue, wanted to say she was tired of running, but she was also tired of being a target. So she packed her bag, grabbed the ultrasound photos and Vincent's letter, and let Sarah bundle her into a car headed out of London. The safe house was a cottage in the Cotswolds, surrounded by rolling hills and sheep, and absolutely nothing else. It was beautiful and isolated, and exactly what Claire needed. She spent 3 days there, walking the grounds with her security detail following at a distance, practicing breathing exercises, trying to prepare mentally for what came next. Labor. Delivery. Actually becoming a mother to Vincent's son. On the 4th day, Sarah came with news. Samantha went back to Chicago. She met with exactly one person while she was here, a private investigator. Then she got on a plane and left. What does that mean? We're not sure yet, but Patricia's working on it. Sarah sat down across from Claire. How are you feeling? Any contractions? Any signs of labor? Just the usual, Braxton Hicks, back pain, the overwhelming desire to not be pregnant anymore. Sarah smiled. Not much longer now. 2 weeks until your due date. 2 weeks felt like forever and no time at all. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She stood at the window looking out at the dark countryside, feeling the baby move inside her. In 2 weeks, maybe less, he'd be here. A real person, separate from her, dependent on her for everything. The responsibility was terrifying. She thought about Vincent dying in that mansion, desperate for this child. She thought about Marcus, buying her escape with his life. She thought about the empire built on violence and fear, the money soaked in blood, the legacy she was supposed to somehow transform into something good. How was she supposed to do that?
How was one woman and one baby supposed to take all that darkness and make it light? The baby kicked, hard, like he was answering the question. Claire put her hand over the movement and made a promise. I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I'm strong enough or smart enough or brave enough, but I'm going to try. I'm going to give you the childhood Vincent never had, the freedom he never knew, the choice to be something other than what he was. She took a shaky breath. And if they come for us again, I'm going to fight. Not because I'm not afraid, but because you deserve better than spending your whole life running. Outside, an owl called in the darkness. The baby settled as if satisfied with her answer. Claire went to bed and, for the first time in months, slept without nightmares. The contraction started 4 days later, right on schedule. Claire woke at 3 in the morning with a pain that wrapped around her entire midsection and squeezed like a fist. She lay there breathing through it, counting seconds, waiting for it to pass. When it did, she checked the time and tried to go back to sleep. 20 minutes later, it happened again. By 5, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She found Sarah already awake in the kitchen, making coffee. I think I'm in labor. Sarah's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. How far apart? 20 minutes, maybe 15. I'm not sure. Okay, let me call Dr. Patel. Sarah was already moving, pulling out her phone, switching into crisis mode. How do you feel? Pain level? Manageable, just intense. Dr. Patel answered on the second ring, listened to Sarah's report, asked to speak to Claire directly. Describe the contractions for me. Sharp or dull? Constant or waves? Waves. They build and then fade. My whole stomach gets hard. That's good. That's normal. How many have you had in the last hour? Claire had to think. 4, maybe 5. All right, this could be early labor, which means you have time. But I want you to start heading to London now. Don't wait until they're closer together. The drive is 90 minutes, and I'd rather you be here sooner than later. Sarah was already packing before Claire hung up. The security team materialized with the calm efficiency of people who'd been briefed on exactly this scenario. Within 30 minutes, Claire was in a car headed toward London with Sarah beside her and 2 additional vehicles forming an escort. The contractions continued, irregular but persistent. Claire breathed through them, gripping the door handle, watching the countryside give way to suburbs and then the city itself. London was just waking up, the streets still quiet in the early morning light. They didn't go to a regular hospital. Dr. Patel had arranged for a private facility in Marylebone, small and exclusive, the kind of place where discretion was guaranteed and security could be maintained. Claire was shown to a private room that looked more like a hotel suite than a hospital, with Sarah and 2 guards positioned outside the door. Dr. Patel arrived an hour later, examined Claire, and delivered the news with a calm smile. You're 3 centimeters dilated. Definitely in labor, but we have time. First babies usually take a while. How long is a while? Could be hours, could be most of the day. Every birth is different. Dr. Patel washed her hands. The good news is that the baby sounds great. Strong heartbeat, positioned well. You're doing everything right. Claire wanted to laugh. She didn't feel like she was doing anything right. She felt terrified and unprepared and suddenly desperate for her mother, who'd been dead for 4 years and wouldn't have known what to say anyway. The hours crawled by. Contractions came and went, growing stronger and closer together. Sarah stayed with her, timing each one, offering ice chips and encouragement. The security team changed shifts outside the door. Dr. Patel checked in every hour, monitoring progress. By noon, Claire was 6 centimeters, and the pain was starting to overwhelm the breathing exercises. She'd refused an epidural earlier, some stubborn part of her insisting she could do this naturally. Now she was reconsidering. There's no prize for suffering, Dr. Patel said gently. If you want pain relief, we can do that. But Claire shook her head. She'd endured everything else without medication, without help, without letting the fear win. She could do this too. She would do this. Another contraction hit, and Claire gripped Sarah's hand hard enough to hurt. When it passed, she was crying. I can't do this. Yes, you can. No, I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know what I'm doing. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I screw him up? Sarah wiped Claire's face with a cool cloth. You think any parent knows what they're doing?
We're all just making it up as we go along, trying not to break anything too badly. You have kids? Had. A son. Sarah's voice went quiet. He died with my husband. Car accident 5 years ago. He was 7. Claire's chest hurt. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Not many people do. Sarah squeezed her hand. But I tell you because I want you to understand something. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have days where you don't think you can keep going. But that baby in there, he's already survived so much just to get here. He's already a fighter, and he's got a mother who's willing to fight for him. That's more than a lot of kids get. Before Claire could respond, another contraction hit, harder than the others. She bore down instinctively, her body taking over. Dr. Patel checked her again. 9 centimeters. Almost there. Almost there. The words felt impossible. Claire had been in labor for 14 hours, and it felt like years. The final stage came fast. One moment she was 9 centimeters, the next Dr. Patel was telling her to push, and Claire's body was doing things she couldn't control, couldn't stop, could only ride out like a storm. She pushed until she thought she'd break. Pushed until she couldn't breathe. Pushed until Sarah was crying along with her and Doctor. Patel was saying encouraging things Claire couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Then suddenly there was pressure and release and a sound that made everything else disappear. A baby crying. Her baby. Vincent's son. Dr. Patel lifted a tiny, furious creature onto Claire's chest, and time stopped. He was red-faced and screaming and covered in vernix and absolutely perfect. Claire's hands came up automatically, cradling him, feeling the warmth of him, the realness. "It's a boy, Doctor," Patel said, even though they'd all known that for months. "Healthy, good color, excellent lungs." Claire couldn't speak. She just stared at this small person who'd been inside her for 9 months and was now separate, breathing, alive. His eyes opened briefly, unfocused but searching, and she felt something in her chest crack open. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." He stopped crying at the sound of her voice, going still like he recognized it. Maybe he did. Maybe he'd been listening to her for months, learning her heartbeat, her breathing, her promises. The next hour was a blur of cleaning, weighing, measuring. The baby scored well on all his tests, 8 pounds, 6 ounces, 21 inches long, perfect APGAR scores. Dr. Patel stitched up Claire's minor tearing while the nurses cleaned the baby and dressed him in a tiny outfit someone had purchased in advance. When they brought him back, wrapped in a blue blanket with a small cap covering his dark hair, Claire took him with trembling hands. "What's his name?" Sarah asked softly. Claire had thought about this for months, had lists of possibilities, names that meant strength or courage or new beginnings. But looking at him now, only one name felt right. Ethan. Ethan Calloway. It meant strong, enduring, and he would need to be both. Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "It's perfect." They moved Claire to a recovery room, larger and more comfortable, with a private bathroom and a small sitting area where Sarah could camp out on the sofa. The security detail remained outside, invisible but present. Claire tried to nurse Ethan, fumbling through the process with help from a patient nurse who showed her how to position him, how to know if he was latching correctly. It hurt more than she'd expected, awkward and strange, but when Ethan finally figured it out and started feeding, something settled in Claire's chest. This was real. He was real. They'd made it. That evening, after Ethan had nursed and slept and been checked by 3 different doctors who all declared him healthy, Patricia Moore called. "Congratulations." Patricia's voice was warm. "Sarah sent photos. He's beautiful." "Thank you." Claire looked at Ethan sleeping in the clear bassinet beside her bed. "What happens now?" "Now we do the DNA testing to confirm paternity, which is just a formality. The results will take a few days, but once we have them, the trust activates fully. The remaining funds transfer to your account, and you become, legally and officially, one of the wealthiest women in London." It still didn't feel real. None of it did. "What about Chicago? What about Evelyn and the others?" Patricia paused. "They know you've given birth. Samantha's investigator found the facility and reported back. Victoria's been making noise about contesting the DNA results before they even come in. But legally, they don't have a leg to stand on. Vincent was very thorough. Will they come here? Try something? I doubt it. The moment that baby was born, the equation changed. Hurting you now doesn't accomplish anything except bringing law enforcement down on their heads. The inheritance is locked in. The trust is active. They lost. But Claire didn't feel like she'd won. She felt exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified of all the ways she could still fail this tiny person depending on her. After Patricia hung up, Sarah came back from getting coffee with news of her own. I spoke with the head of security. He wants to move you and Ethan back to the Kensington house tomorrow. Says the facility here is secure, but home will be better for long-term protection. Tomorrow? Already? If you're up for it, Dr. Patel says you're recovering well and Ethan's healthy. No reason to stay if we don't have to. Sarah sat down carefully on the edge of the bed. I know it's fast, but the sooner we get you both somewhere more permanent, the better. Claire looked at Ethan again, so small and fragile. The idea of taking him out into the world felt impossible. But staying here, exposed and vulnerable, felt worse. Okay, tomorrow. That night, Claire barely slept. Every time Ethan made a sound, she was awake, checking on him, making sure he was breathing. The nurses came every few hours to check vitals, and each visit left Claire more exhausted. Around 3 a.m, Ethan woke crying. Claire picked him up, tried nursing, tried changing, tried walking around the room. Nothing worked. He just kept crying, getting more upset, his little face red with frustration. Claire felt panic rising. She didn't know what he needed, couldn't figure out what was wrong. She was failing at this already, failing after less than 24 hours. Sarah appeared in the doorway, drawn by the crying. Let me try. She took Ethan gently, positioned him against her shoulder, and started a swaying motion that was part walk, part dance. Within minutes, he quieted. How did you do that? Claire asked. Practice, and remembering that sometimes babies just need to cry. They're processing, adjusting, figuring out this new world. It's not your fault. Sarah handed Ethan back, now calm and drowsy. Claire settled into the chair with him, feeling his warmth against her chest. I'm going to mess this up, she said quietly. I'm going to make so many mistakes. Yeah, you are, and he'll survive them. Kids are tougher than we think. Sarah sat down across from her. My son used to cry for hours when he was a newborn. Colic, the doctors said. Nothing helped. I remember calling my mother one night, sobbing, saying I couldn't do it. And you know what she told me? What? That motherhood isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, day after day, mistake after mistake, just showing up and trying again. Sarah's smile was sad. You're already doing that, Claire. You're already enough. The words settled over Claire like a blanket. She looked down at Ethan, his eyes closed now, his breathing even and peaceful. I'm going to give you everything Vincent couldn't give himself, she whispered. Safety, choice, a life without fear. I promise. They moved back to the Kensington house the next afternoon. The trip was carefully orchestrated, with the security team sweeping the route first, checking for any signs of surveillance or threat. Claire rode in the back seat with Ethan in a car seat that looked far too large for his tiny body, her hand hovering over him the entire drive. The house had been transformed. The nursery was fully set up now, with a crib and changing table and rocking chair. Someone had stocked the kitchen with groceries, filled the bathroom with baby supplies, made sure everything Claire might need was within reach. Sarah helped her get settled, showed her how to work the baby monitor, the bottle warmer, all the equipment that came with keeping a newborn alive. Then she made Claire lie down while she took Ethan for a few hours. You need to sleep while he sleeps. That's the first rule of newborn survival. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to say she couldn't possibly sleep with her baby out of sight. But exhaustion won. She was asleep before Sarah left the room. She woke to crying 3 hours later, stumbled out of bed, and found Sarah in the nursery trying to soothe a very unhappy Ethan. He's hungry, and he only wants Mom. Claire took him, got them both settled in the rocking chair, and managed the nursing process with slightly more confidence than the first few times. Ethan latched on and fed urgently, his little hand curled against her chest. This was going to be her life now. Feeding, changing, soothing, sleeping in fragments. No more running, no more hiding. Just this small person and the enormous responsibility of keeping him safe and whole. The DNA results came back 4 days later. Patricia called with the news, though they'd all known what the results would be. Paternity confirmed. Ethan James Calloway is legally Vincent's son and heir. The trust is now fully active. You have complete control over the assets until Ethan turns 25, at which point he can choose to take over management or continue delegating to you.
How much are we talking about? Claire asked. She'd never actually asked for the exact number, too overwhelmed by everything else. The trust is valued at approximately $43 million. Your personal accounts now hold $15 million, the 5 from before plus the 10 from the birth. The London house is yours. You also have controlling interest in 3 legitimate businesses Vincent owned, which generate about $2 million annually. And there are various other assets, properties, investments, etc. Claire sat down hard. $43 million. For Ethan. Because Vincent had been so desperate for a son that he'd given his entire fortune to a baby he'd never met. What about the illegitimate businesses, the criminal stuff? Vincent spent his last few years transitioning out of most of the criminal enterprises. What's left has been absorbed by other families or shut down by law enforcement. There's nothing illegal in the trust. Vincent made sure of that. After Patricia hung up, Claire looked at Ethan sleeping in his bassinet. He had no idea that he was now worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime. No idea that his father had died trying to give him a legacy free from violence. No idea that his existence had nearly gotten his mother killed. Sarah found her an hour later, still sitting there watching Ethan sleep. "You okay?" "I don't know. I have enough money to never work again, to give Ethan anything he could possibly want, but I don't know how to make sure that money doesn't destroy him the way it destroyed Vincent's family." You raise him to understand that money is a tool, not a measure of worth. You teach him about the world, about consequences, about how to use privilege responsibly. Sarah sat down beside her. And you remember that you have time. He's 5 days old. You don't have to solve everything today. But the threats weren't waiting for Ethan to grow up before they materialized again. The call came from Patricia 2 weeks later. Claire was in the middle of a diaper change, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and her 4th cup of coffee, when her phone rang. "We have a problem." Claire's stomach dropped. "What now?" Victoria and Derek are divorcing. The marriage lasted exactly 6 weeks, and Victoria's filing a lawsuit claiming that Vincent was mentally incompetent when he signed his will, that you coerced him, and that the entire pregnancy was a fraud designed to steal the inheritance. That's insane. We have DNA proof. They know. But they're trying to tie you up in legal proceedings anyway. Make it expensive, time-consuming, exhausting. They know they can't win, but they can make you suffer for years trying to defend yourself. Claire looked at Ethan on the changing table, his legs kicking, his face peaceful and content. He didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve to spend his childhood trapped in legal battles over his father's estate. "What do I do?" "You let me handle it. That's what Vincent paid me for. They want a war? We'll give them one. But on our terms, not theirs." The lawsuit became a dark cloud hanging over everything. Patricia assured Claire it was baseless, that no judge would take it seriously, but the stress seeped into everything anyway. Claire found herself jumping at shadows, checking the security cameras constantly, terrified that legal action was just the opening move in something worse. Ethan turned 1 month old, then 6 weeks, then 2 months. He grew and changed, his features sharpening, his personality emerging. He smiled for the first time at 8 weeks, and Claire cried from the sheer unexpected joy of it. He slept in longer stretches, which meant Claire slept more too, emerging from the fog of newborn exhaustion into something resembling functionality. Dr. Morrison told her this was all normal, the hypervigilance, the anxiety, the constant fear that something would go wrong. Trauma didn't disappear just because the immediate danger had passed. "You're in survival mode, Bucka," Dr. Morrison said during one session. "Your brain is still trying to protect you from threats, even when you're safe. It's going to take time to convince yourself that you and Ethan are really okay." But were they? The lawsuit was ongoing. Chicago still felt too close, its shadows reaching across an ocean. And Claire still woke up sometimes in the middle of the night, convinced she heard footsteps in the hallway, sure that someone had finally found a way past the security and was coming for her son. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 months after Ethan's birth, Claire received a letter. Not through Patricia's office or the encrypted channels, but regular mail forwarded through several addresses. The return label said Samantha Calloway. Sarah wanted to screen it first, but Claire insisted on reading it herself. Inside was a single page, handwritten in neat script. Claire, I don't expect you to trust this letter or believe anything I say. I understand why. But I'm writing anyway because I need you to know something. I went to London because I wanted to see if you were real. If the woman who convinced my dying father to give her everything was a con artist or something else. I hired that investigator to find you, to get proof of whatever scheme you were running. Instead, he reported back that you were living quietly in Kensington, recovering from childbirth, taking care of a newborn, not spending Vincent's money on anything extravagant, not celebrating your victory, just being a mother. That wasn't what I expected. I thought you'd be like everyone else who ever got close to my father, calculating, greedy, cruel. But maybe you're not. Maybe Vincent saw something in you that the rest of us missed. I can't speak for Victoria or my mother. They're going to keep fighting you because that's who they are. But I'm done. I'm withdrawing my support for the lawsuit. And I wanted you to know that when Ethan is old enough to ask about his father, about our family, you can tell him he has at least one aunt who didn't hate him before he was born. I don't know if we'll ever meet. Maybe that's for the best. But I hope you raise him well. I hope he grows up free from all the poison that destroyed our family. And I hope someday, if he wants to know where he came from, you'll let him reach out. Samantha. Claire read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't friendship, wasn't anything except a small acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, the war didn't have to be eternal. She showed it to Sarah, who read it with her usual skepticism. Could be a trick, could be her trying to get close to you. Or it could be genuine, someone finally seeing me as a person instead of a threat. Maybe. Sarah handed the letter back. What are you going to do? Claire looked at Ethan, asleep in his bouncer, his tiny fists curled near his face. I'm going to keep this letter, and someday when he asks about his family, I'll show it to him. Let him decide if he wants to know his aunt. Patricia called the next day with better news. Victoria's divorce from Derek had gotten ugly, with Derek claiming Victoria had married him under false pretenses and then cut him out of everything. The legal battle between them had completely derailed the lawsuit against Claire. They're turning on each other, Patricia said with barely concealed satisfaction. Classic mistake. They were only strong when they were united. Now they're just self-destructing. Is it over? Not yet, but soon. Victoria's running out of money to fund the legal battle. Evelyn's keeping her distance, probably worried about being dragged into the mess. Give it another few months and the whole thing will collapse. Those few months crawled by. Claire focused on Ethan, on establishing routines, on learning how to be a mother. She took him to the park, bought him books he was too young to understand, talked to him constantly about everything and nothing. Sarah stayed close, a presence that was part bodyguard, part friend, part fairy godmother. She taught Claire things her own mother never had: how to trust her instincts, how to ask for help, how to forgive herself for not being perfect. On Ethan's 6-month birthday, Patricia called with the final news. It's done. Victoria withdrew the lawsuit. She released a statement saying she's satisfied with the DNA results and wishes you and Ethan well. The legal challenges are over. Claire sat down, feeling something inside her finally unclench. It's really over? Legally, yes. They could try again, but they'd be laughed out of court. You won, Claire. You and Ethan are safe. After she hung up, Claire picked up Ethan and held him close. He was sitting up now, grabbing at everything, laughing at silly faces. He had Vincent's dark hair and Claire's eyes, and his own personality that was emerging more every day. We made it, she whispered into his soft hair. We actually made it. That night, she read Vincent's letter one more time, then put it away in a safe box along with Samantha's letter and the ultrasound photos and everything else Ethan would need someday to understand where he came from. But that was for later. For now, Claire had a life to build, a son to raise, a future to create that was clean and bright and nothing like the darkness that had brought them here. She looked out the window at the London street, quiet in the evening light, and felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. The peace didn't last as long as Claire hoped, but it lasted long enough for her to catch her breath.
long enough to realize that she'd been holding herself so tightly for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to just exist without constantly bracing for the next attack. Ethan turned 1 year old on a sunny June afternoon in the garden behind the Kensington house. Claire had invited exactly 3 people: Sarah, Dr. Morrison, and Dr. Patel. No extended family, no elaborate party, just a small celebration for a child who'd survived his first year despite everything the world had thrown at him. Ethan smashed his face into a small cake while the adults laughed and took photos. He had 4 teeth now, could stand while holding onto furniture, and said "Mama" with enough frequency that Claire was pretty sure he actually meant it. He was a happy child, easy to please, quick to smile. Nothing like what Claire had feared during those long nights in Chicago, when she'd wondered what kind of person Vincent's son would become. After the guests left and Ethan was down for his nap, Claire sat in the garden with a cup of tea and allowed herself to think about the future. Real future, not just survival. What kind of life did she want to build for Ethan? What kind of person did she want him to become? Sarah found her there an hour later, staring at nothing. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "But I was thinking about Vincent, about what he said in that letter, that he was giving me a choice. Raise Ethan to continue the empire or raise him to end it." Claire set down her tea. "I've been so focused on keeping him alive that I haven't really thought about what comes after. After? After the immediate danger. After the lawsuits. After all the running and hiding." Claire looked at the house, the garden, the life she'd built in this borrowed piece. Vincent left Ethan $43 million. That money came from somewhere. From violence, from fear, from people getting hurt. How do I let Ethan benefit from that without teaching him that it's okay to hurt people for profit? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "You use it differently. You take the money and you transform it into something that helps instead of hurts. That's how you break the cycle." The idea took root slowly over the next few months. Claire started researching, reading about charitable foundations and social programs and the different ways money could be used to create change instead of destruction. She talked to financial advisors, to lawyers, to people who'd spent their lives trying to undo the damage that people like Vincent had caused. And slowly, a plan began to form. On Ethan's 2nd birthday, Claire established the Callaway Foundation. Its mission was simple: provide support and resources to victims of organized crime, witness protection assistance, legal aid, trauma counseling, job training for people trying to leave violent situations. Everything Vincent's empire had destroyed, the foundation would try to rebuild. Patricia handled the legal work, setting up the structure so that the foundation would be funded by the trust's investment returns. Millions of dollars that would have just sat in accounts generating more wealth, now flowing toward actually helping people. Vincent would hate this, Patricia said during one of their planning meetings, but she was smiling. Using his money to dismantle everything he built? He'd be furious. "Good," Claire said. "He should be. He was wrong about almost everything. Maybe this is how we make it right." The foundation's first project was a safe house in Chicago, providing emergency shelter and support for people fleeing dangerous situations. Claire insisted on Chicago specifically, putting the work exactly where Vincent's influence had been strongest. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. When the safe house opened, Claire received a letter, not from Victoria or Evelyn, but from Samantha. "I heard about the foundation, about what you're doing with Vincent's money. I don't know if you'll believe this, but I think he would have been proud. Not of what you're doing. You're right, he would have hated that. But proud that his son's mother had the strength to do it anyway. That takes courage. More courage than any of us had. Thank you for that." Claire kept that letter too, adding it to the collection of things she'd someday show Ethan when he was old enough to understand. Ethan grew. 2 became 3. 3 became 4. He was bright and curious and occasionally stubborn, with an independent streak that reminded Claire of Vincent, and a gentleness that was entirely his own. He asked questions constantly, wanted to understand how everything worked, why things were the way they were. Claire answered honestly, always. When Ethan asked why they lived in London instead of America, she told him they needed to be safe. When he asked about his father, she told him that his daddy had loved him very much but had died before Ethan was born. She didn't lie, but she didn't tell him everything either. Some truths could wait until he was older. Sarah became a constant presence in their lives,
more family than employee. She taught Ethan to ride a bike, helped him with school projects, showed up for every milestone like she had a right to be there. Because she did. She'd earned it through years of protection and support and genuine care. Dr. Morrison helped Claire work through the trauma that still surfaced sometimes. The nightmares were less frequent now, but they still came. The hypervigilance had faded but never completely disappeared. Claire still checked the locks twice before bed, still felt her heart race when someone unexpected knocked on the door. "You survived something terrible," Dr. Morrison told her during one session. "That doesn't just go away, but it does get quieter. You learn to live with it instead of being controlled by it." Claire was learning. Slowly, imperfectly, but learning. When Ethan turned 5 and started primary school, Claire made a decision. She called Patricia and asked for a complete accounting of what remained of Vincent's original business interests. "There are still 3 companies," Patricia said, "all legitimate now. A construction firm, a property management company, and a logistics operation. They generate about $2 million annually, like I said. Why?" "I want to sell them. All of them. Put the proceeds into the foundation." Patricia was quiet. "That's a significant amount of money you'd be giving up." "I don't need it. Ethan doesn't need it. But the foundation could use it, and I want those companies gone. I don't want anything left that Vincent built. I want it all transformed into something different." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." The sales took months to arrange, but eventually all 3 companies were sold to buyers who had no connection to the Callaway name or Vincent's legacy. The proceeds, nearly $30 million, went directly into the foundation's endowment. With that money, the foundation expanded. More safe houses, a legal clinic, a scholarship program for children of crime victims, job training programs, counseling services. Everything Claire had wished existed when she was trapped in Chicago with an abusive boyfriend and no way out. The work was hard and often heartbreaking. Claire heard stories from the people the foundation helped, stories that reminded her too much of her own past, of the fear and desperation that had led her to Vincent's door in the first place. But she also saw people heal, saw them rebuild their lives, saw them find safety and hope and second chances. That made it worth it. Ethan asked about the foundation when he was 6, after visiting one of the safe houses with Claire. "Why do those people need help, Mama?" "Because sometimes bad people hurt them, and they need somewhere safe to go while they figure out what to do next." "Like how we had to leave America and come here?" Claire's chest tightened. "Something like that, yes." "Was someone trying to hurt us?" She'd known this conversation was coming eventually, had practiced different versions of it with Dr. Morrison, but actually having it was harder than she'd expected. "Yes, baby, some people were very angry at me and we needed to leave so we could be safe." "Are they still angry?" "I don't think so. I think they've moved on to being angry about other things." Ethan considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult problems. "Is that why we help people at the foundation? Because we know what it's like to need help?" "That's exactly why." He nodded, satisfied with the answer, and went back to playing with his toys. But Claire knew more questions would come. They always did. When Ethan was 7, Victoria died. The news came through Patricia. A car accident, single vehicle, late at night. The police report mentioned alcohol. Derek, her ex-husband, had remarried and moved to California. He didn't attend the funeral. Claire felt a strange sadness at the news. Not grief exactly. She'd never known Victoria well enough for that, but a sense of waste, of a life that could have been different if Vincent's family hadn't been so consumed by money and power and fear. She sent flowers to the funeral with a card that said simply, "I'm sorry for your loss." Evelyn sent them back with a note, "We don't want your pity." After that, there was silence from Chicago. Evelyn retreated into whatever life she'd built for herself. Lily finished graduate school and moved to Seattle, as far from the family drama as she could get. Samantha stayed in Chicago, practicing law, occasionally sending brief emails updating Claire on family news. The Callaway empire, such as it was, had dissolved completely. The name still carried weight in certain circles, but that weight was fading. In another generation, Vincent Callaway would be a footnote in Chicago's history, if he was remembered at all. Claire found she was okay with that. Ethan turned 10. He was tall for his age, athletic, with his father's dark eyes and strong jaw.
But his smile was all Claire's, quick and genuine and unburdened by the weight of the past. He knew more now about where he came from. Claire had started telling him stories about Vincent, carefully edited stories that painted his father as a complicated man who'd made bad choices but who'd loved Ethan enough to try to give him a different life. "Do you think he was a good person?" Ethan asked one evening. "I think he was a person who did both good things and bad things. The bad things hurt a lot of people. But the good things, like making sure you'd be safe, like setting things up so you'd have choices he never had, those matter too." Which was bigger, the good or the bad? Claire thought about Marcus dying on a warehouse floor, about the money built on violence, about the family torn apart by greed, but also about the foundation helping hundreds of people, about Ethan growing up free from the darkness that had consumed Vincent. "I don't know. I think maybe that's for you to decide when you're older." Ethan was quiet for a while. Then, "I want to work at the foundation when I grow up. Help people like you do." Claire's throat tightened. "You can do anything you want, baby. That's the whole point." When Ethan was 12, Samantha came to London. She called ahead this time, asked if she could visit, said she understood if Claire said no. Claire surprised herself by saying yes. They met at a cafe in Notting Hill, neutral territory, with Sarah stationed at a nearby table just in case. Samantha looked older than her 43 years, tired in a way that came from carrying too much for too long. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," Samantha said after they'd ordered coffee. "I wasn't sure I would, but Ethan's getting older, asking more questions about his family. I thought maybe it was time." Samantha smiled slightly. "How is he?" "Good, really good. He's smart, kind, wants to change the world." Claire pulled out her phone, showed Samantha a recent photo. Ethan at a foundation event, grinning at the camera. He looks like Vincent, but happier. Samantha studied the photo. "I came because I wanted to apologize for the lawsuit, for the investigators, for all of it. We were so caught up in fighting over money that we forgot we were fighting over a child. My nephew. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." "Why now?" "Because Evelyn died last month. Heart attack. And sitting at her funeral, I realized I was the last one left. Victoria's gone, Lily won't talk to me, and I'm sitting in that church surrounded by people who pretended to care about my mother but really just cared about her money. And I thought, is this what we sacrificed everything for? Is this what we destroyed our family over?" Samantha's voice cracked. "It was all so stupid, so pointless." Claire didn't know what to say. Evelyn was dead. The woman who'd threatened her, who'd tried to poison her baby, who'd made her life hell for months. She should feel something. Relief, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, she just felt tired. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said finally. "Are you? Really? My mother was terrible to me in a lot of ways, but I still cried when she died. You can hate someone and still grieve them. It's complicated." Samantha wiped her eyes. "I don't want to intrude on your life. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but if Ethan ever wants to know about his father, about our family, about where he comes from, I'd like to be available for that, if you'll let me." Claire considered it. Ethan deserved to know his family history, good and bad, deserved to hear about Vincent from someone who'd known him as a father, not just as a dying man making desperate choices. "Okay, but on my terms. Supervised visits here in London with me present. And if at any point I think it's not good for Ethan, it stops. That's fair?" Samantha pulled out a business card. "My contact information. Use it whenever you're ready, or don't. The choice is yours." They finished their coffee, making awkward small talk, then parted ways. Sarah appeared at Claire's elbow the moment Samantha left. "You okay?" "I think so. It was strange. She seemed genuine. People change, especially after they lose everyone who made them into who they were." Sarah watched Samantha disappear into the London crowd. "Doesn't mean you have to trust her, but maybe she really is trying to do better." Claire introduced Samantha to Ethan slowly, carefully. First through video calls, then brief in-person visits at the house with Claire always present. Samantha was awkward with children, clearly unpracticed, but she tried.
She brought books about Chicago, old photos of Vincent from before the cancer, stories about the family that weren't about violence or crime, but about ordinary moments, birthday parties, family dinners, the time Vincent took his daughters to see their first baseball game. Ethan absorbed it all with his usual curiosity, filing away information about a father he'd never know and a family that had tried to prevent him from existing. "Aunt Samantha seems sad," he said after one visit. "She is. She lost a lot of people. Because they died, or because they stopped talking to each other?" Sometimes Ethan's perceptiveness caught Claire off guard. "Both. That's why you always say family is about who shows up, not who shares blood." "That's right. So Sarah's family, and Dr. Morrison, and Aunt Samantha's trying to be." Claire hugged him. "You've got it exactly right." The years passed. Ethan excelled in school, made friends easily, showed an early aptitude for mathematics and logic that reminded Claire painfully of Vincent. But where Vincent had used his intelligence to build criminal enterprises, Ethan used his to solve problems and help people. At 14, he volunteered at the Foundation's legal clinic, helping file paperwork and organize case files. At 16, he started a fundraising campaign at his school that raised £50,000 for the safe houses. At 17, he gave a speech at a foundation event that brought half the audience to tears. "My father built an empire on fear," he said, standing at the podium with confidence Claire envied. "He hurt people, destroyed lives, created suffering so he could have power. And then he died, leaving behind a son he never met and a fortune built on blood. My mother could have used that money to continue what he started. Instead, she chose to transform it into something that heals instead of hurts. That's not just smart, it's revolutionary. It's proof that we don't have to be defined by where we come from. We can choose to be better." Watching him, Claire felt Vincent's presence like a ghost at her shoulder. This was what he'd wanted, wasn't it? A son who could be better than him? A legacy transformed? After the speech, Ethan found Claire in the crowd. "How'd I do?" "You were perfect. Your father would have been proud." "Think so?" "I know so." When Ethan turned 18, Claire gave him the box she'd been keeping for him. Inside were Vincent's letter, Samantha's letters, the ultrasound photos, the DNA test results, newspaper clippings about the lawsuit and the settlement, everything that documented where he'd come from and what it had cost to get him here. Ethan read through it all in silence, his face cycling through emotions: shock, sadness, anger, understanding. "Marcus died for me," he said finally, holding the news article about the ambush. "Marcus died protecting you. There's a difference." "Is there? I was just a baby. I didn't even exist as a person yet. How was I worth dying for? Because you represented a chance, a possibility that something good could come from Vincent's life. Marcus believed in that possibility enough to give his life for it." Claire sat beside him. "I think about him sometimes, about what I'd tell him if I could. I'd tell him it was worth it, that the boy he died protecting grew up to be someone extraordinary, someone who's using his father's fortune to help people instead of hurt them. I think he'd be proud." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, "I want to go to Chicago, see where it all happened, meet the people who are still there." Claire's first instinct was to say no, to protect him from the place that had nearly killed her. But Ethan was 18 now, legally an adult, with the right to make his own choices. "Okay, but I'm coming with you." They flew to Chicago in late summer, just before Ethan's first term at university. Sarah came too, still protective after all these years. Samantha met them at the airport, looking nervous and hopeful. The city had changed in 18 years. The mansion on Lakeshore Drive had been sold years ago, converted into luxury condominiums. The streets looked the same but felt different. The weight of Vincent's influence finally lifted. They visited Marcus's grave first. Claire had never been, too afraid to return to Chicago while the legal battles were ongoing. But now, standing at the simple headstone with Ethan beside her, she finally said the words she'd been holding for 18 years. "Thank you for saving us, for believing we were worth saving. I hope we've made you proud." Ethan placed flowers on the grave, white roses, the kind Marcus had apparently loved. "I'll make it count," he said quietly. "I promise." They visited the Foundation's Chicago safe house next, the one Claire had insisted on opening first.
The director, a woman named Maria, who'd escaped an abusive marriage with the foundation's help, gave them a tour. "We serve about 40 people at any given time," Maria explained. "Temporary shelter while they figure out next steps. Legal aid, job training, counseling. Everything someone needs to start over." "How many people have you helped?" Ethan asked. "In the 18 years since we opened? Over 2,000. Some stay a few weeks, some a few months. But they all leave safer than when they arrived." 2,000 people. 2,000 lives changed because Claire had chosen to transform Vincent's blood money into something better. Ethan was quiet during the drive back to their hotel. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking about the trust, about what happens when I turn 25 and gain full control. You don't have to decide anything now. I want to give it all to the foundation, everything, the whole 43 million. Claire's breath caught. "Ethan, that's your inheritance. Your security. You don't have to—" "I know I don't have to. I want to. You've shown me what that money can do when it's used right. I want to keep doing that, expanding it, reaching more people. And I don't need $43 million to live. I'm going to university, getting a degree, building my own career. I'll be fine." His eyes were Vincent's, but his voice was entirely his own. "This is how I finish what you started, Mom. This is how we make sure Vincent's legacy is something good." Claire was crying now, proud and terrified and overwhelmed. "You're sure?" "I'm sure it's not even about Vincent anymore. It's about all the people like you, like Marcus, like everyone who got caught up in systems they didn't build and couldn't escape. If I can use this money to break those systems, to give people actual choices instead of just survival, that matters more than any amount in a bank account." They flew back to London 3 days later. On the plane, Ethan fell asleep against Claire's shoulder, exhausted from the emotional weight of the trip. She looked at his face, peaceful in sleep, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first day in the Chicago mansion to this moment, 18 years of running and hiding and fighting and healing. 18 years of transforming Vincent's desperate final gamble into something neither of them could have predicted. Sarah caught her eye from across the aisle and smiled, understanding everything without words. 3 years later, on his 25th birthday, Ethan signed the papers transferring the entire trust to the Callaway Foundation. The ceremony was small, just Claire, Sarah, Samantha, Patricia, and a few foundation staff members. But it felt monumental. "This is a historic gift," Patricia said, reviewing the final documents. "The largest single donation the foundation has ever received. It'll fund operations for decades." "That's the idea," Ethan said. "I want this to outlive all of us. Want it to still be helping people long after everyone's forgotten who Vincent Callaway was." After the signing, they had dinner at the Kensington house. Samantha brought wine, Sarah made her famous lasagna, and they toasted to new beginnings and old endings and the strange, winding path that had brought them all together. "I wish I could have met him," Ethan said at one point, meaning Vincent. "I wish I could have known him as a person instead of just a story." "What would you have said to him?" Samantha asked. Ethan thought about it. "I'd thank him for giving me life, even if his reasons were selfish. I'd thank him for setting Mom up so we could be safe, and then I'd tell him I'm glad I never had to become what he wanted me to be, that I got to choose something different." "He would have understood that," Claire said. "In the end, that's all he wanted, for you to have the choice he never did." The foundation continued to grow. With the trust fund fully endowed, it expanded into new areas: education programs, job placement, housing assistance, mental health services. The safe houses multiplied, spreading beyond Chicago to other cities where organized crime had left wounds that needed healing. Ethan finished his degree in social policy, then a master's in nonprofit management. At 28, he became the foundation's executive director, taking over day-to-day operations from the retiring founding director. Under his leadership, the foundation's reach tripled. Claire stayed involved but stepped back from the active management, finally allowing herself to just be a mother instead of a general constantly preparing for battle. She traveled, painted, took cooking classes, did all the things she'd never had time for when survival was the only priority. She was 48 years old and finally actually happy. Samantha became a regular presence in their lives, more aunt than adversary. She retired from law and started volunteering at the foundation's legal clinic, using her decades of experience to help people navigate the same system that had once been weaponized against Claire. "I can't undo what my family did to you," she told Claire one afternoon while they were reviewing case files. "But I can spend whatever time I have left trying to make up for it." "You don't have to make up for anything. You weren't the one who tried to hurt me." "No, but I stood by while it happened. That's almost as bad." Samantha's voice was firm. "I'm not doing this out of guilt, Claire. I'm doing it because it's right. Because Ethan showed me what it looks like to break a cycle instead of continuing it. I want to be part of that." Claire understood. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future that proved the past didn't have to define you. On what would have been Vincent's 80th birthday, Claire and Ethan visited Chicago one more time. They went to Marcus's grave again, flowers in hand. But they also went somewhere new, the site where the warehouse had been, the place where Marcus had made his final stand. It was a park now, built by the city on land that had been abandoned for years. Children played on swings, families had picnics, and in one corner stood a small memorial dedicated to victims of violence. Claire and Ethan stood there for a long time, watching life happen in a place that had once been about death. "Do you think it was worth it?" Ethan asked. "Everything that happened, everyone who died, all the pain, was it worth it to get here?" Claire thought about the question carefully. About Vincent dying alone, desperate for meaning. About Marcus bleeding out in the darkness. About the years of fear and running and fighting. About the foundation helping thousands of people. About Ethan standing beside her, healthy and whole and committed to making the world better. I don't know if worth it is the right question. It happened. We survived it. And we chose to make something good from something terrible. That's not worth or not worth. That's just what we did with what we were given. Fair enough. Ethan was quiet for another moment. Then, "I'm glad you're my mom. I don't say that enough. I'm glad you're my son, even though you scared me half to death being born in the middle of a war." "I had good timing." They laughed, and it felt like healing. The Foundation's 20th anniversary gala was held in a London ballroom, packed with donors and supporters, and people whose lives had been changed by the work. Claire stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Ethan give the keynote speech, and felt a hand on her shoulder. Sarah, older now, but still sharp-eyed, smiled at her. "You did it. You really did it. We did it. All of us. No, this was you. You took an impossible situation and you turned it into something beautiful. Vincent gave you money, but you gave Ethan everything else. Values, compassion, the courage to choose differently. That's all you, Claire." Claire watched Ethan finish his speech to thunderous applause. 21 years old when this started, 46 now, and she'd spent every single day of those 25 years fighting to make sure Vincent's legacy became something worth inheriting. "Do you think he knows?" she asked quietly. "Wherever he is, do you think Vincent knows what we did with his last gift? I think if he can see anything, he sees a son who's better than he ever was. A fortune being used to heal instead of hurt, and a woman who refused to let fear win." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Yeah, I think he knows. And I think for the first time in his life, he's actually proud of something he built." The next morning, Claire wrote a letter. Not to Ethan, not to Vincent, but to herself. The woman she'd been at 26, standing at those gates in Chicago with 2 suitcases and no idea what was coming. "You're going to be terrified," she wrote. "You're going to want to run. You're going to make mistakes and doubt yourself and wonder if you're strong enough for this. But you are. You're stronger than you know. And 25 years from now, you're going to look at your son and realize that every single terrible moment was preparing you for this. For him. For the chance to break a cycle that's destroyed generations. So take the job, carry the baby, survive the war. Because on the other side of all that fear is a life worth living and a son worth fighting for. Trust yourself. You've got this." She sealed the letter and put it in the box with all the others. The documentation of a journey from desperation to redemption, from violence to peace, from Vincent Calloway's dying wish to his son's living legacy. Ethan found her in the study later that afternoon. "You okay, Mom?" "Yeah, just thinking about how we got here." "And?" "And I'm grateful. For all of it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts." She smiled at him. Because they gave me you. Ethan hugged her, and in that moment, Claire understood what Vincent had been searching for in his final months. Not power, not fear, not even legacy in the traditional sense. Just this, the simple certainty that you mattered to someone. That your life, however imperfect, created ripples that kept spreading long after you were gone. Vincent had died afraid he'd be forgotten, but his name lived on, not through violence or empire, but through a foundation helping thousands of people rebuild their lives. Through a son who'd chosen compassion over cruelty, healing over harm. Through Claire, who'd taken a dying man's desperate gamble and transformed it into proof that people could change, that cycles could be broken, that redemption was always possible if you were willing to fight for it. The Callaway Foundation continued its work long into the future. When Claire was 70 and Ethan was 45 with children of his own, the foundation celebrated its 50th anniversary. The Chicago Safe House had become a network of 20 facilities across 10 cities. The legal clinic had helped over 50,000 people. The education programs had sent 3,000 children to college. Claire stood with Ethan and his family at the celebration, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by work that started with a dying Mafia boss's last desperate attempt at meaning. "Grandma," Ethan's daughter asked. She was 10, curious, full of questions. "Did you really know my great-grandfather Vincent?" "I did, for a little while." "Was he nice?" Claire thought about how to answer that, about Vincent in his wheelchair, bitter and dying and desperate, about the violence in his past and the gentleness in his final days, about the complicated truth that people were rarely all good or all bad, just human and flawed and trying their best with what they knew. "He was complicated, she said finally. "He did bad things. But he also did one very good thing at the end of his life. He made sure your daddy could grow up safe and free and able to choose a different path. That matters." The little girl nodded, satisfied with an answer that was honest without being cruel. That night, alone in her room, Claire read Vincent's letter one final time. The paper was fragile now, the ink faded, but the words were still clear. "Make him better than I ever was." "I did," she whispered into the darkness. "We did. Rest easy, Vincent. Your son is everything you hoped for and nothing you feared. The legacy you left behind is healing people instead of hurting them. You got your redemption after all, just not the way you expected." She folded the letter carefully and put it back in its place. One more piece of history preserved for future generations who would need to understand that change was always possible, that money could build as easily as it destroyed, and that the greatest legacy anyone could leave was simply the choice to be better than they had to be. Outside her window, London slept. Somewhere across the ocean, Chicago went about its business, the Callaway name barely a memory in the city where it had once meant fear and power. And in homes and safe houses and legal clinics across the world, people Vincent would never meet benefited from a choice made in desperation by a dying man who'd spent his whole life being afraid. Fear had driven Vincent to build his empire, but it was love, complicated, imperfect, born from impossible circumstances, that transformed that empire into something worth leaving behind. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. The story of Claire Bennett and Ethan Callaway became the Foundation's origin myth, told and retold to new staff and volunteers and donors. Not as a fairy tale with easy answers, but as a testament to what could happen when someone refused to let circumstance dictate outcome. When they chose transformation over acceptance, healing over revenge, future over past, Claire lived to see her grandchildren grow up, lived to see the Foundation expand into international work, helping communities recovering from organized violence around the world. Lived to see Ethan become a respected leader in the nonprofit sector, his father's name associated not with crime but with compassion. When she died at 83, surrounded by family, in the same Kensington house where she'd raised Ethan, her last thought was of that first night in Chicago. Standing at those gates with 2 suitcases and no idea what was coming, terrified and desperate and completely unprepared for the journey ahead. If she could go back and tell that younger version of herself anything, it would be simple. You're enough. You're scared and unprepared and absolutely not qualified for what's coming. But you're enough. And 25 years from now, you're going to understand that being enough was all that ever mattered. The Callaway Foundation continued long after Claire was gone, its mission expanding and evolving, but always rooted in the same principle: that the resources built through violence could be transformed into tools for healing, that no legacy was set in stone, that every ending could become a beginning if someone was brave enough to reimagine it.
Vincent Callaway's name appeared in the Foundation's literature, a footnote in a larger story about transformation and choice. His wealth, once built on fear, now funded safety and support and second chances for people who'd never known his name. And Ethan, carrying both his father's name and his mother's values, spent his life proving that where you came from mattered less than where you chose to go. In the end, that was Vincent's true legacy. Not the empire he built, or the fear he inspired, or the fortune he accumulated, but a son who'd been given the freedom to choose differently and had used that freedom to help thousands of others do the same. From fear to love, from violence to healing, from desperate survival to purposeful living. That was the journey. That was the transformation. And that was how one woman's impossible choice changed not just her own life, but countless others, rippling forward into a future Vincent Callaway could never have imagined, but would have been proud to see. The story ended where it began, with choice. Not the choice Vincent made in desperation, but the choice Claire made every day, to show up, to try, to believe that broken things could be rebuilt, and that poisoned ground could bloom again if someone was willing to do the work. And she was willing, every single day, for the rest of her life. That was enough. That was everything.